Chapter 1377. It was because of this that the saber, which was like an arrow on a bowstring, did not strike. The eyes of the two men behind nearly fell out of their sockets as they witnessed the scene. They all knew that Brother Lu was not mentally sound, but his cultivation base was already at the pinnacle. He was indeed the strongest among the three of them, and was also the main force in this ambush on Yunyang. However, was it really appropriate for him to act so recklessly and alone? Was that not seeking death? They could even imagine the scene of Brother Lu continuing to charge forward blindly and being killed by Yunyang with a single slash. When pinnacle cultivators fought, a single misstep could lead to death. Yunyang also had many achievements in killing the souls of his enemies. Both sides were on completely different sides. Once he had the upper hand, there was no way he would show mercy. Therefore, Brother Lu's death was almost certain. The two of them should have fallen back a little, considering whether they should retreat as soon as possible. In spite of this, the other two men were dumbfounded by what they saw. Brother Lu seemed to have recovered his senses, just as he was about to come into contact with Yin Yang. He reacted swiftly and escaped from the range of Yin Yang's saber's murderous aura with a miraculous movement skill. While the two men were secretly impressed, they were even more doubtful. With Yin Yang's achievements and the mountain that he had purposely built, it was only natural that he had been waiting for this moment. Brother Lu had fallen into a trap of death. Even if he had a pinnacle cultivation base and a miraculous movement skill, it was impossible for him to escape. Had Brother Lu's idiocy dragged Yunyang down with him? After that, both of them were even more shocked. Lu had actually sheathed the saber in his hand and looked at Yunyang from the air, then up at the sky, before turning back to look at the two men behind him. His expression was one of inexplicable confusion. It was a shocking sight to behold. Not only were the two men surprised, but Yunyang was also doubtful. With a slight frown, he pointed his saber at Brother Lu and hollered, "Since you're here, what are you playing tricks for? Come down and fight." Brother Lu's expression was complicated as he murmured, "The blade is sharp, but if it's stained with the blood of a hero, won't its edge be covered in dust?" His tone was lost, but it seemed to be implying something. Yin Yang's heart skipped a beat as he sneered, "You're already here. What blood of a hero? No matter how much you've done for mankind, how can it compare to your selfish schemes and greed? Come on, don't spout nonsense over there and pretend. Your so-called conscience no longer belongs to you." Brother Lu's face alternated between red and white. The two people behind him roared, "Lu Yong is here. What are you doing?" This despicable fellow's luck was off the charts. He had been on the brink of death just now, but he had managed to escape from the hopeless situation. Yin Yang had never been merciful, so why had he shown mercy to this fellow? No matter what, this fellow was still the strongest among the three of them. With him around, the plan could still work, especially when he had inadvertently attracted a significant portion of Yin Yang's attention while he was muddle-headed, allowing the other two to launch a sneak attack. However, just as the two of them were about to move, they realized that a certain spot had coincidentally blocked their path of attack. It was impossible for the two of them to launch a sneak attack together. This was simply outrageous. Lu Yongzai's face twisted for a long time, then he suddenly let out a long sigh. Brother Lu is right. I want to be an ordinary cultivator from the bottom of my heart. I don't want to stain my hands with the blood of heroes. This kind of power struggle, this kind of shady business that goes against my conscience. This old man can't do it. I won't do it anymore." Suddenly, with a long howl, he shot up into the sky, turning into a ray of light in the air. "This old man is going to the Blood Soul Mountain now, for the rest of my life. Do whatever you want here, Supreme Cloud, take care." With a swoosh, his figure disappeared. Yin Yang was stunned by the sudden turn of events, while the other two lords were about to spit blood from anger. Brother Lu roared in anger, "Lu Yongzai, what the F***ck are you doing? Come back quickly." Lu Yongzai's figure had completely disappeared. Only his voice could be heard from afar. "My saber will never spill the blood of heroes. My hands will never stain the souls of the innocent. This old man gives up on this fight. This old man also gives up on anything related to the Son of Saint. The rest of my life will be spent on the Blood Soul Mountain." His voice grew fainter and fainter, finally disappearing completely. When the two of them heard this, they were dumbfounded. A strong urge to vomit blood surged in their hearts again and again. At this moment they really wanted to spit blood. F*CKU. King. That brother Lu flew into a rage. This blockhead really pissed me off. Seeing that he was like an idiot who didn't understand this, and that. I explained it to him, and enlightened him at the same time. Who would have thought that this enlightenment would actually lead him to leave? It's fine if you leave, but the three of us have to work together to come up with a strategy. You're the F*King strongest among the three of us, alright? Your departure is not as simple as losing a link. It's equivalent to directly tricking the two of us, tricking us to death. I haven't done many good things in my F*King life. I've only spoken a few words of advice today. But who would have thought that my advice would have such an amazing effect? I've directly persuaded him to leave. But such a F*King result. I've directly sent myself to my death. I shouldn't have practiced martial arts. I should have gone and taught disciples. I should have gone and become a teacher. What a F*King dog. Looking at the ray of light in the distance, he felt as if his entire chest was blocked, and a stifling feeling was stuck in his throat. He couldn't spit it out, and he couldn't swallow it either. The other person was also dumbfounded, and he didn't know what to do. He stared at Brother Lu. Brother Lu, you what did you say to him? What did Brother Lu say? Lu Yongzai left just like that? Lu, what have you done? The other person exploded. Are you two trying to trick me to death? I didn't say anything. Brother Lu felt that he was completely dumbfounded. He hurriedly explained the situation to Brother Lu through telepathy, and said speechlessly, I didn't expect that a few F*King words would actually enlighten him. F*King hell, he just left. Brother Lu wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Brother Lu, what's going on? I'm F*King curious. How can there be such a person in the Northern Wilderness Devil Palace? How can this kind of person participate in the fight for the throne? F*CK, this is going to be my death. He looked at Brother Lu with endless resentment. Couldn't you have gone and enlightened him at any time? Why did you have to do it now? F*King hell. Brother Lu's hands were numb, and his face was ashen. This old man is also puffed. Finally, he could not hold back the frustration in his heart, and spat out a mouthful of blood. Only then did he feel a little better in his chest. I'm so angry. Looking at Yun Yang standing in front of him with his saber, the other Saint Lord was uncertain. Then what do we do now, fight? How could he possibly defeat him? On the contrary, Brother Lu was no longer conflicted. It was impossible to fight. Yun Yang had the battle record of defeating 12 third-level Saint Lords in a row. His combat strength was so strong that he was not only invincible among Saint Lords of the same level, but he was also invincible among Saint Lords. The triangular formation that they relied on to defeat the enemy had yet to be deployed, but one of them had already left without fighting, and it was the strongest of the three. According to the plan, each of the three holy sons would send one person to fight the enemy with the three ultimate arts of the three heavenly palaces, complementing each other's weaknesses. After a day and a night of painstaking practice, it was a special formation that was specially designed to counter Yun Yang's superb saber technique. Yun Yang's saber technique was incomparably exquisite. It was almost impossible to fight him in this aspect. Therefore, they planned to use defense as offense, each displaying their strengths and complementing each other's weaknesses with the formation's movements. With the three of them working together, they would wear Yin Yang down. After a day and night of training together, the three of them had already familiarized themselves with this kind of combat technique. Their combined power had almost doubled now. They had lost a corner before the battle had even begun. How could they fight? It would not end well for them. Yun Yang had faced a group of third-level Saint Lords alone the day before yesterday, taking them down with a few slashes each time. And the two of them were only third-level Saint Lords. If the two of them worked together, the possibility of being killed by Yun Yang was more than 90%, even if it was not certain that they would die. The best outcome was that one of them would die, while the other would be heavily injured and escape. That was all. However, The two of them were not old friends, and their friendship was very limited. Would they be willing to risk their lives to create a chance of survival for the other? If they did not fight, would there be a chance to escape? At this moment, the two of them felt like they were being cooked. They looked at each other and saw each other's constipated expression. Yin-yang was puzzled. What was wrong with these two? Coming here, they could not stop fighting, but they were also giving each other meaningful looks? What were they doing? Could it be that they were old and wanted to have a twilight romance? After a while, Yin-yang could not help but holler, "Men, come forward to accept your death." The two men looked at each other, and Brother Lu suddenly heaved a long sigh. "My saber has never been stained with the blood of a hero." Brother Lu sighed. "Supreme Cloud, take care. This old man is going to the Bloody Soul Mountain now. The rest of my life is dedicated to the Bloody Soul Mountain." Before his voice echoed in the air, he turned into a beam of light and sped away. "As long as King Lu Yong is here, I won't be able to beat the sh*t out of you even if I catch up to you." However, this departure was equivalent to giving up everything. Sigh, it was still better than dying. The other person was dumbfounded once again. *ck your mothers. This King pockmarked was not pockmarked but deceitful. Deceitful? I've never seen such a deceitful person. However, wasn't this the path to survival? There were already two of them, why couldn't they do the same? If I'm the only one left, I'll definitely die. Then he heaved a long sigh. "Supreme Cloud, I'm afraid there will be more half-saints coming to deal with you in the future. The three of us are just scouts, but this isn't the end of our skills. This old man has stopped this time not because of anything else, but because I don't want to bury my Taoist heart. I'll head to the Bloody Soul Mountain now, and do my part for the human race. Take care of yourself. This old man is very ashamed that I can't do anything for you." As he spoke, he cupped his fists, his face filled with righteousness and a tinge of shame. "The mountains are high and the rivers are long, we'll never meet again." Before his words echoed in the air, he turned into a shooting star and sped towards the southern sky. This time, Yin-yang was completely clueless as to what was happening before him. At this moment, he was thrown into disarray by the wind. What exactly was going on? He lowered his head to look at where he was standing, and the mountain he had created with his own hands. He then felt the various vicious traps that he had set up a few days ago. The secret tactics to defeat the enemy. Was I being stood up? I've spent so much effort to prepare for this battle, but in the end, I'm only standing here? Not even a single slash? If I were to lure other enemies here in the future, wouldn't I be telling them that there was something wrong with this mountain? Otherwise, why would you be so eager to bring him here? I didn't expect there to be such a righteous person in the camp of the Holy Sons. I've thought too darkly of a person's heart. No matter what, Yin-yang still felt a sense of comfort in his heart. Forget it, let them go. He stood up solemnly and turned to give a deep bow towards the distance. "Thank you, all three of you. I, Yin-yang, am deeply grateful for your heroism. May you have a safe journey to the Bloody Soul Mountain." His voice traveled far away. The person who was walking at the back could still hear it and staggered, almost falling from the sky. He really wanted to say, "Supreme Cloud, you've misunderstood. You've really misunderstood." However, he did not say anything in the end, only speeding up. "Sigh. I've said I'm going to the Bloody Soul Mountain, so I'll really go there and fight the demons for the rest of my life. I can't go back to the Holy Sons anyway." As he pondered, he did not slow down at all, and gradually disappeared into the distance. Yin-yang's words were pretty, as if he had turned enemies into friends with the three who had left. In fact, he had thought about it for a long time, and still could not figure out what was going on. Everything else aside, the murderous aura that the three of them exuded when they came from afar could not be faked. They were definitely here to kill him. Moreover, the three of them had roared at each other in exasperation. Based on Yin-yang's estimation of the trio's cultivation base, they were all at the pinnacle of third-level Holy Emperor. Each of their combat power would not pale in comparison to the Supreme Clouds he had fought earlier. Among them, Brother Lu, whom he had interacted with for a brief moment, was the strongest. Whether it was his cultivation base, his saber skill or movement skill, His combat power was bound to be superior to his peers. Yin Yang knew that he could easily defeat him one-on-one, and it would not be difficult to defeat him one-on-two. However, he would have to expend some cultivation method to fight against three. If the other party had some combined skills, they could still cause additional interference to him, which meant that his advantage was not absolute. Of course, this was not taking into account the many external tricks that Yin Yang had prepared to build the mountain. Defeating the enemy and winning was all within his grasp. Why did the other party suddenly repent the moment he saw him? Why was it so sudden? Regardless, it was better to repent than to be stubborn. It was best to avoid such an internal strife among the human race if possible. It was definitely not a bad thing for the other party to head to the Bloody Soul Mountain. After all, the final battle between the human and the demon race was not far away. It was more beneficial than detrimental to let the pinnacle holy monarchs get used to fighting the demon race earlier. Thinking of this, Yin Yang did not ponder further. However, how could he still make use of the many traps here? He began to ponder this question instead. Ever since he had embarked on this path, Yin Yang had planned his every step carefully. Along the way, not just this mountain, he had left countless traps that were beneficial to him. He was even more aware that there might not even be 30% of the traps that could be of use to him. Most of the rest would be wasted. However, he was not afraid of wastage. As the wealthiest man in the bound of universe, he could afford to consume a little. After all, it was better than having nothing when he wanted to use it. Just as he was thinking, there was a sudden tremor in the space above him. The space above his head shattered like a mirror with a crack. A large hand appeared abruptly, falling towards Yin Yang. The huge hand that suddenly appeared was over 1,000 feet in radius. With this grab, it covered a large area indiscriminately. Yin Yang reacted swiftly. The moment he swung his saber, it was as if he was being pressed down by a tremendous force from the sky, falling straight down from the top of the mountain. Rather than saying that he could not withstand the tremendous force, the fall was more like he had sunk into a swamp. The gigantic hand did not waver in its approach, colliding with Yin Yang's saber light head-on, and dispersing the saber light without any hesitation. It descended from the sky almost without stopping, chasing after Yin Yang in a frenzy. Boom! With a loud bang, the large hand slammed onto the top of the mountain. Yin Yang, who had already entered the mountain, could only feel the entire mountain, that was made of refined gold quiver. His surroundings rumbled as well, cracks appearing all over the place. How could the force of a single palm be so powerful? Fortunately, the power of the large hand was exhausted. With a soft bang, it turned into specks of golden light and dissipated instantly. In the air not far away, a white silhouette grunted, blood trickling down the corner of his mouth. What kind of mountain is this? He bellowed. The palm that he had gathered all of his cultivation base had landed on the mountain. Logically speaking, if it were an ordinary stone mountain, the force of the palm should have crushed it completely. It was only a matter of time before the mountain crumbled. Furthermore, Yin Yang had entered the mountain so easily, which meant that the mountain was actually just an ordinary mountain. Therefore, he had slammed his palm down without hesitation. However, the mountain in front of him had only shaken a little after taking the blow. There were not even many broken stones and rocks from the top of the mountain. Furthermore, it had dispersed the palm that he had gathered his mystical chi. It even produced a rebounding force that directly caused him to suffer internal injuries. Although the white-clothed man did not know what the texture of the strange mountain in front of him was like, he could already conclude that the texture of the strange mountain was special and far exceeded his understanding. It must be known that only a mountain that could completely withstand his full-strength palm strike, without any damage, could produce the same amount of rebound force, and cause him, who was caught off guard, to suffer a great loss. This was probably the difference between bullying the weak and not being able to fight back. The man in white did not know the texture of the strange mountain in front of him, but he could tell that the strange mountain's texture was unique, far beyond his knowledge. Only a mountain that could withstand the full force of his palm strike without any damage could produce the same recoil force and cause him, who was caught off guard, to suffer a great loss. This was probably the difference between bullying the weak and not being strong enough. However, there were not many things in this world that could not be destroyed by the man in white's palm strike, let alone directly forming a mountain. This was too bizarre. While the man in white was still in shock, the wind suddenly whistled under his feet, and a sharp saber light cut through the air. The moment the saber light flashed, its momentum increased rapidly, like a raging storm. In an instant, the boundless saber light had already gathered into a saber mountain, rising from the ground and shooting straight into the sky. Since his attack had failed, Yin Yang's counterattack came as fast as lightning. 4th level Saint Lord. The man in white had instantly determined Yin Yang's true cultivation base level. Although the combat power that Yin Yang had displayed so far had far surpassed that of a 4th level Saint Lord, he was still able to accurately grasp Yin Yang's true cultivation base. This was the insight of a half-step saint into the world. In front of a half-step saint, everything in the world was as clear as a blazing fire. Nothing could be hidden. However, it was one thing to determine a person's cultivation base, and another to actually fight. Just like the young man in front of him, his attack was extremely sharp, and he had just been ambushed and suffered the recoil of his full-force palm strike without any preparation. The injury caused by the recoil was still aching, and the moment he exerted force, blood spurted from his mouth. Freeze! The true power of the law of heaven and earth. A half-step saint cultivator's unique ability was to speak with the will of heaven, to obey the law. With this command, the heaven and earth within a radius of thousands of feet fell silent. Yin Yang's soaring cloud saber mountain, that was charging towards him like a raging storm, was frozen in midair. The saber light soared into the sky but froze instantly. Countless sabers glowed brilliantly in the air, a spectacular sight to behold. At the same time, Yin Yang's tall silhouette that had soared into the sky was frozen as well. In a flash, the man in white had already appeared near Yin Yang. Above Yin Yang's head was 1,000 feet high saber mountain, while below him was 1,000 feet of empty space. He was frozen in the air quietly, unable to even move a finger. The advantage of both sides' offense and defense was suddenly reversed. What a peerless genius! The man in white's expression was indifferent, no longer enraged by the unexpected damage. Instead, his gaze was filled with conflict. Was he really going to kill him? Although there were geniuses all the time, geniuses were also divided into different levels. An extraordinary talent like Yin Yang was hard to come by even in a billion years. It would be such a waste to kill him just like that. A 22 to 23-year-old 4th grade saint. This was unprecedented. Such an achievement was not only unprecedented, but it would be hard for anyone to catch up to him in the future. Not only his cultivation base, but even his combat awareness, tactics, and intelligence were extraordinary. This legend was now right in front of him, unable to move. As long as he stretched out his hand, he could squash him to death with 2 fingers. He could kill the legend instantly. However, the hesitation in the depths of the man in white's heart made it difficult for him to make a decision. Yin Yang, can you swear not to participate in the selection of Supreme Heaven Pavilion? The man in white looked at Yin Yang with a pitiful expression. Yin Yang, there are 3,000 ways, but the road ahead is not the same. You're a rare talent of the bound of universe's human race for thousands of years. If you die like this, it would be such a waste. Why seek your own death because of a moment of impulse? Yin Yang was frozen in the air, unable to move or speak. He could only stare at the man in white in front of him. The man in front of him was an expert beyond his knowledge. Before they even exchanged a single blow, he was already at an absolute disadvantage. He could not even control his own life and death. The situation was so bad that he had never seen it before. Duo! With a command, Yin Yang felt that his eyes could move and his mouth could speak, but his body was still immobile. He squinted and said faintly, "Half saint. Half saint. Unless it's someone above the level of half saint, what other force in this world can keep you in check?" The man in white smiled faintly. "You're really amazing. You have the skills, the intelligence, the courage, the decisiveness, the future. You can even hurt me with your setup. You're not bad at all. With my identity, I shouldn't have attacked again if I missed my target, not to mention that I was injured by your setup. It's a huge loss, and I'm defeated on the spot. However, you still lack the decisive ability. Otherwise, how can you turn the tables on each other? The man in white said patiently, "My suggestion is not for you to compromise. The selection of the Supreme Heaven Pavilion does not have any practical benefits for you. Even if you're chosen to be the lord of the palace, you're not familiar with the place, and you have no foundation to speak of. How can you really control the palace? The palace that you've inherited will not be able to recover in the next 10,000 years. It'll be hard for it to regain its former glory. Therefore, the Supreme Heaven Pavilion is completely useless to you. If you're willing to swear to the heaven and earth now that you'll no longer participate in the selection of the Supreme Heaven Pavilion, I can make the decision and let you live." The man in white said softly, "I'll take care of all the troubles from the sons. Your safety will no longer be in danger." He sighed softly and said, "I really think that it would be a great pity if you died here. It would be a great pity for the human race. How about it? Are you willing to take a step back?" Yin Yang could feel the sincerity in the man's words. He did feel sorry for him and wanted to let him live, but swear? Take a step back. Yin Yang blinked, his tone full of mockery as he said, "Yin Yang thanks Senior for your kindness, but does Senior think that after I swear to withdraw, the 3 heavenly palaces will be able to have everything go smoothly, and all the sons of Saint will live in peace without any more disputes?" The man in white was taken aback and did not answer immediately. "Perhaps Senior thinks that after I leave, the position of the palace lord of the 3 heavenly palaces will fall into the hands of someone whom Senior approves of, and that the palace that Senior belongs to will be even more glorious. Or does Senior think that the top 3 heavenly palaces of the bound of universe, the 3 heavenly palaces that hold the fate of the world in their hands, will only be controlled by people who play tricks every day and assume the position of the highest decision-maker be considered successful? I, Yin Yang, have been crowned with the title of Bound of Universe's Supreme Cloud, but I admit that I haven't achieved that much, nor have I truly reached the level of the Bound of Universe's hero. However, since I've been pushed to this position, my achievements are real, and no one can deny it. I wonder if Senior agrees with this. Do you have any objections?" "Yes, I have no objections." The man in white's eyes were half-lidded. This was something that no one could deny, and there was no room for doubt. "I'm a hero, my achievements in the bound of universe, my glory in history, but I'm being targeted by those sons of God who are high above. They want to kill me by any means necessary. Is this right? It shouldn't be. If Senior were to guard the mountain of blood soul for the human race all your life, how would you feel if you were betrayed and killed by the people you've protected? Would you take a step back?" Yin Yang asked softly. "I'd be furious. I'd kill them. Why would I take a step back?" The man in white's tone was still calm, but Yin Yang's first 4 questions echoed in his heart. Was it really good to hand the heavenly palaces over to such a person? Did it mean that it was right all along? "That's what I've done," Yin Yang said faintly. "But they've asked Senior to kill me. Senior can't bear to kill me. So you've come to force me to give up, to make me take a step back and make an oath to heaven?" Yin Yang smiled mockingly. "I've earned the opportunity to step on these people and climb to the pinnacle of this world with my merits. I didn't act rashly or deceitfully. So why do I have to take a step back and make an oath to give up?" The man in white sighed softly and said regretfully, "It looks like you're not willing." "I'm not willing. You'd rather die than be willing?" The man in white asked softly. "That's right. In this life of mine, I've marched forward. There's no turning back, there's no retreat." Yin Yang said faintly, "I only see the path ahead of me. I don't care about the hardships and obstacles along the way, nor do I care about the life and death tribulations along the way. Everything is but training. If I walk forward, it's my destiny. If I can't, it's also my destiny." Yin Yang looked at the half-saint coldly. "On the contrary, I'm very surprised. I've always thought that the sons of saints could only send forth a 4th-level saint lord at most. I didn't expect that they could actually ask for help from someone as lofty as you, Senior." The man in white exhaled softly and said, "This old man is called Ningfengxue, Lord Supreme Cloud. After this reincarnation, don't forget to seek revenge from this old man." "So you still want to kill me?" Yun Yang was not surprised by this man called Ning Fingshue's final decision. Any expert, famous, or strong person would have their own standpoint to choose. What really surprised him was that such a lofty person had long been untainted by karma, and had never fallen to the mundane world. Why would he appear here to attack him just for the battle of the sons of saints? Or perhaps, what was the reason that could make this person willingly enter the trap? The East Celestial Palace can only bear the surname Dongfang. Ning Fingxue sighed softly. Lord Supreme Cloud, I'm sorry. A fair, jade-like hand slowly reached forward and pressed down on Yin Yang's forehead, who could not move at all. Even if Yin Yang's cultivation base was brimming, and he was in peak condition, he would still not be able to escape death. Moreover, Yin Yang could not move at all. He could only close his eyes and wait for death. It's better not to be so outstanding in my next life. The moment Ning Fengshue's palm pressed down, the last moment before it touched Yin Yang's forehead, Yin Yang's gaze that was initially tinged with anticipation suddenly turned cold and murderous. If I don't have a way to protect myself, how can I stay here? With a single thought, a purple light shot up into the sky. A purple jade flute appeared in the air. Chapter 1378. The purple jade flute that he had not seen for a long time suddenly appeared in the air. Following Yin Yang's will, it fluttered towards Ning Fingxue. Ning Fingxue frowned and said calmly, "Are you still going to struggle at this stage?" His right hand's momentum did not change, instead it sped up. At the same time, the purple jade flute came along with the momentum, and met Ning Fengshue's palm soundlessly. For Ning Fengxue, the purple jade flute was not a surprise at all. In fact, it could barely be considered a joke. It was not funny. You can't even move now. You want to fight for a chance of survival in front of a semi-sage, just by using your mind to control the purple jade flute? How naive are you? However, Ning Fengshue's expression changed at the very next moment. Just as his palm was about to touch the purple jade flute, and feel the coldness and warmth of the flute, he even began to think that this was a good treasure. However, when he came into contact with the purple jade flute, he did not manage to grab hold of it. The purple jade flute maintained its motionless posture, and continued to slowly smash towards him, further touching his palm. It was at that moment that Ning Fengxue felt his hand suddenly turn into air, never to be seen again. Could one imagine that a half-step saint cultivator, a pinnacle expert of this world, who was still in control of the situation a moment ago, easily taking on the last bit of his opponent's counterattack, would suddenly lose his hand? It was inexplicable, unbelievable, and even more unbelievable. What was even more unbelievable was that the purple jade flute's momentum remained the same. It followed its original trajectory, and followed Ning Fengshue's hand. Then it could be said that it smashed through, smashed his hand into thin air, smashed his arm into thin air, then smashed it into thin air, then smashed his arm into thin air, and then continued to smash towards him. It was only then that Ning Fengxue felt pain. Excruciating pain. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he looked at his own hand. Yes, he should look at the position where his hand and arm should be. But there was nothing there. Every part of his body that had come in contact with the purple jade flute had disappeared. In the next moment, a soul-tearing pain surged through him like a torrential tsunami. Ning Fengxue exclaimed, his elegant and handsome expression finally changing completely. He retreated like a flash of lightning, 30,000 feet away. Looking up, the purple jade flute was still hovering in front of Yin Yang. There was no wind or movement. But in front of him, there was another purple jade flute. Just like before, it slowly followed the trajectory of his arm and smashed towards him. Actually, using smashing here wasn't very appropriate. Rather, it should be said that it was an unstoppable momentum. If he really used smashing here, it would seem like he was overestimating Ning Fengxue too much. Even though he was a half-saint, he was still not worthy of the purple jade flute. Smash! Ning Fengxue was terrified. He hastily mobilized all of his divine senses to confirm that his right hand, forearm, and elbow had really turned into nothingness. It wasn't an illusion, nor was it some kind of trick. What is this? Seeing that the purple jade flute was still chasing after him, his body twisted and turned in the air. In an instant, He had teleported at least 30,000 feet away. He even tore through space repeatedly to escape, but the purple jade flute was still chasing after him, relentlessly chasing after him. From the beginning to the end, it was still slowly crushing over. There was no wind or movement. Ning Fengshue's body began to flicker. Techniques such as psionic manifestation and duplicating body were performed repeatedly, his body turning into thousands of figures. If any one of them could escape the purple jade flute's pursuit, Ning Fengxue would have the hope of escaping alive. However, the purple jade flute in the air had also turned into thousands of flutes. No matter how many Ning Fengxue appeared in the air, there was a purple jade flute in front of each Ning Fengxue, slowly approaching. There was still no wind or movement. Ning Fengxue was sweating profusely, drenching his shirt. His eyes were filled with fear as he stared at the purple jade flute. He could clearly feel that his clones and shadows were being crushed by the purple jade flute one by one. They were smashed into the air and completely disappeared. Every clone, every shadow that was smashed into the air would disappear, and the corresponding purple jade flute would also disappear. His cultivation was at the half-saint realm, and each of his clones and shadows possessed a cultivation at the peak of the 4th grade Saint Monarch realm. However, in front of the purple jade flute, they didn't have the slightest ability to resist. No, it was not only his clones and shadows but his real self as well. No matter how he moved and how he tried to escape, the purple jade flute followed him like a maggot in his bones. He could not shake it off no matter what. He knew that he was not dead, yet not because he was faster than the purple jade flute, but because Yin Yang had not given the final order to kill him. It had been tens of thousands of years, and Ning Fengxue once again felt the fear of death. He fled in a frenzy, using all sorts of techniques. Weapons, mystical powers, and magical treasures were all thrown out. However, no matter what kind of mystical weapon or magical treasure they were, they vaporized instantly when they came before the purple jade flute, disappearing in an instant. There was not even the slightest chance to slow him down. It was as ordinary as it had been in the beginning. There was no wind or movement. It was just so leisurely, slowly flying behind him. With a flash, Ning Fengxue appeared in front of Yin Yang once more. At first glance, the scene was almost devastating. Yin Yang was still imprisoned by himself, but there was a purple jade flute in front of Yin Yang. It was like a dutiful guard, not moving in the slightest despite the lack of wind. What the hell was this thing that had been following him and chasing him? Had he really seen a ghost today? When their eyes met, Ning Fengxue could see that Yin Yang was still unable to move, but his cold eyes were looking at her quietly. At this moment, Ning Fengshue's face was deathly pale. His celestial and otherworldly appearance had long since disappeared. He was in a sorry state, but the expression in his eyes was still calm. Even though he was no longer composed, his white robe was still spotless. If it was not for the fact that his entire right arm, all the way to his shoulder, was gone, he would not have looked so sorry. There was no trace of blood where his arm had been cut off, as if he was born without a right arm. The purple jade flute stayed quietly on his right shoulder, no longer moving forward, but it did not retreat either. Just like before, it was unmoving, unperturbed like a mountain. Ning Fengxue was no longer evading, no longer casting his arcane skills, as if he had given up on struggling. In fact, he was channeling his mystical art wholeheartedly, trying to recover his right arm. However, the more he channeled his cultivation method, the worse his expression became. When one reached the level of a supreme saint, regrowing a severed limb was already a trivial matter. When one reached the level of a saint, even if his entire body was destroyed, as long as there was some flesh and blood left, he could use a saint's strong vitality to swiftly recover. As for Ning Fengxue, who had already reached the level of a half-saint, logically speaking, it would only take a blink of an eye for his missing arm to grow back. It would be no different from his original arm. However, the actual situation now was, no matter what he did, no matter how much he urged the ocean-like mystical chi in his body to repair and grow, the severed arm could not grow back. Endless vitality surged into his shoulder, but it would disappear immediately, unable to nourish his physical body and regrow his severed arm. In addition to the countless clones that had been shattered by the purple jade flute, Ning Fengshua's mental strength was extremely weak, not even half of what it used to be. This pinnacle expert who stood above the clouds was like a candle flickering in the wind, with only a spark left. If Yun Yang had not pulled his hand back, he would have been killed by the purple jade flute. How could there be a fluke? Ning Fengshua finally stopped trying. His composure was nowhere to be seen, replaced by a forlorn smile. Then he calmed down. With a snap of his fingers, the restraints that trapped Yun Yang were lifted. Then he heaved a long sigh and said, "Great technique, truly a great technique. What artifact is this?" As Yun Yang extended his arm, the purple jade flute in front of him and the one on Ning Fengshua's shoulder disappeared at the same time, leaving only the one that fell into his hand. It was as if there was only one purple jade flute from the beginning to the end, glowing with a purple glow. "I dare not claim that it's a great technique. It's just my last resort," Yun Yang said faintly. Yun Yang said faintly, "This is a defensive treasure that my master has given me. It's used to deal with people like you, senior, who I can't even handle. This is the first time I've seen the might of this flute today. I can only marvel at it in awe." Ning Fengshua guffawed. "This old man wants to kill you. You've gained the upper hand now. Why don't you just kill me now?" Yun Yang said quietly, "I've never been a good person, but it's a pity for someone like Senior to die just like that. The Crimson Soul Mountain still needs warriors after all. This purple jade flute's power is too shocking. I'm afraid that Senior's arm can't possibly recover." Ning Fengshua shook his head and smiled faintly. Acting rashly, inviting disaster upon oneself. "I've tried to harm a hero of this world. If this arm is heaven's punishment for this old man, it's only a small punishment. How dare I ask for more?" With a wave of his hand, he brought Yin Yang down to the peak of the mountain. When both of their feet touched the ground, Ning Fengshua sighed and said softly, "Back then, Buyu was the reincarnation of this old man's eldest disciple. He was hunted down when he was weak and his life was in danger. It was Dongfang Xingchen who appeared with his guards and saved his life." Ha! Yun Yang was taken aback. He recalled that the Saint Lord who guarded the Crimson Soul Mountain, Buyu, was actually the reincarnation of his eldest disciple? Palace Master brought Dongfang Xingchen, who was still a young man at that time, along with Buyu, to this old man. On account of Palace Master's face, although this old man knew that young Palace Master was behind all of this, "I still promised you a favor. This favor will allow this old man to help young Palace Master once. And it can be anything." Yin Yang's expression tightened. "Anything? That's right, with senior status and cultivation base. Since you've made a promise, it should naturally be anything. There are very few things in this world that senior can't do or not do." A faint smile appeared on Ning Fengshua's face. "There's a limit to a person's strength. Even a half-saint cultivator is still a human. Naturally, there's a price to pay for making false promises. When I said those words, I already felt that heaven was punishing me. But I relied on my cultivation base and was blindly confident. So, it's actually here. Heaven's reincarnation is indeed good. Who will be spared? After this old man has no more karmic entanglements in this world other than Lord Supreme Cloud's kindness of sparing my life. Lord Supreme Cloud has his own ways. I'm afraid you won't care about this old man's repayment. Since Lord Supreme Cloud said that the Crimson Soul Mountain lacks warriors, then this old man hopes that the Crimson Soul Mountain can kill a few more demon kings as compensation." He glanced at Yin Yang. "Lord Supreme Cloud, thank you for your magnanimity for sparing my life. This old man shall take his leave now." Yin Yang was clear that this old man actually understood everything in his heart, so he explained the ins and outs of the matter before leaving. "Senior, take care. We may meet again in the future on the Crimson Soul Mountain, and it's not impossible for us to fight the enemy together." Ning Fengshua laughed heartily. Good. We'll meet again on the Crimson Soul Mountain." Before his voice echoed in the air, he had already torn the space apart with a wave of his remaining left hand. He took a step into the space and turned back, wanting to say something, but in the end, the words did not leave his mouth. Waving his hand, he disappeared without a trace. Yun Yang had the purple jade flute in his hand, So why would he need to remind him of anything? As for what Yin Yang wanted to do, it was not up to him to say anything. Everything would just go with the flow. Watching Ning Fengxue, the pinnacle cultivator of this world, leave, Yin Yang's gaze was deep. Dongfang Xingchen. As expected, Dongfang Haoren's son was the one who gave the most orders, and he was also the one who wanted him dead the most. He had actually sent out a half-saint cultivator to assassinate Yin Yang. It's time to settle this matter once and for all. I just don't know if you all are willing to see the scene after I've settled it. The arrival of this half-saint should be the climax of this incident. I believe that these sons of saints won't be able to invite a saint expert. If I were Dongfang Xingchen, I wouldn't be willing to waste such a huge favor to ask Ning Fengxue for help. I would want to take back some of the price. Ning Fengxue, this half-saint expert, will never fail. If it were me, I would also think that the matter is settled. Then I should do this and this. In a secret space, 3 people with the same solemn expressions sat in a circle. How many on your side? Dongfang Haoren's face, which had always been calm and composed, was now extremely ugly as he asked Shimen Fanfu. Shimen Fanfu, the lord of Western Heaven Saint Palace, had a twisted expression on his face. 32. What about you? He asked Beigong Liuli. Beigong Liuli's face was ashen. 28. Dongfang Haoren said as if he was about to vomit blood. Why are there so few of you? At this moment, he felt like he was going to die of embarrassment. I didn't write 8,000 today after all. GT. Chapter 1379. How many do you have? The 2 palace masters asked at the same time. 37. Dongfang Haoren's face was completely twisted. You have to add the Sacred Heart Palace. The great elder of the Sacred Heart Palace has already confirmed that there's something fishy going on. So many people in the Sacred Heart Palace are suspicious as well. Dongfang Haoren would never have thought that the Eastern Celestial Palace would suffer the greatest loss in this purge. This made Dongfang Haoren, who had always thought of himself as wise and strict, lose face. Shimen Fafu and Beigong Liuli looked at each other. Although they were slightly gloating, their hearts were heavy, and they could not be happy even if they wanted to. 4 holy sons of the Eastern Celestial Palace. It has been confirmed that 3 of them are involved in this matter, and they are the masterminds. The biggest mastermind is my son, Sai. When Dongfang Haoren said this, the other 2 did not want to know what he was feeling. Beigong Liuli also looked like she was about to vomit blood. My son is the same. Similar to your son. Shimen Fafa's face was green. Both of your sons are involved. Don't tell me you think that my son will stay out of this. The 3 palace masters looked at each other and saw the complicated expressions on each other's faces. This matter has actually gone out of control now. Dongfang Haoren smiled helplessly. The people with ulterior motives have already been found. This is no longer the current focus. The current focus should be on. This force is too strong. Once they are all cleaned up, the 3 celestial palaces will lose at least 20% of their overall strength. This loss is too much. When did these bastards gather so many experts? Shimen Fafu also felt troubled. What should we do now? Should we continue with the plan? Dongfang Haoren smiled bitterly. The plan has its rewards, and the rewards are not small. The biggest reward of the plan is Yin Yang. If we change our minds and stop the operation, it's not right. Along the way, Yin Yang's cultivation base has been constantly improving. He's even raised his cultivation base to the 4th grade saint realm through the tempering of life and death situations. He's only a step away from entering the realm of half-saint. Dongfang Haoren said in a low voice. I have said it from the beginning. Yin Yang's future is not limited to the 3 heavenly palace lords. He can become the next pillar of the bound of universe. His advancement cannot be interrupted. As he spoke, his expression became even more unsightly. Now that something like this has happened to the heavenly palace, I haven't made up my mind yet, whether or not I should completely eradicate it. I believe it's the same for the 2 of you. Dongfang Haoren's expression was pained and complicated, but he gritted his teeth and said, Since you and I can't make a decision and can't be ruthless, then let Yin Yang solve this matter. Let's just say that out of sight, out of mind. Shimin Fanfu closed his eyes and said softly, "That's right. Let Yin Yang take over and deal with it. Even if he kills them all, I won't have any complaints. If Yin Yang is willing to let them go, it'll be difficult for us when he comes back. If Sai." Shimin Fanfu's words were incoherent, and his expression was even more unsightly. After a long while he finally stopped talking. Dongfang Haoran's lips were trembling as he murmured, "How could it have come to this?" His gaze was actually a little hollow. Beigong Liuli's expression was complicated as she heaved a long sigh. She shook her head as if she wanted to say something, but did not say it in the end. The 3 heavenly palaces can be managed well in your hands, but you can't even teach your son well. The 3 heavenly palace lords looked at each other and saw the heart-wrenching helplessness in each other. As the 3 of them were discussing, Dongfang Haoran's expression changed abruptly. He grabbed a communication jade and inserted mystical qi into it. He had already instructed them not to disturb him unless there was something important. Now that there was such an urgent message, it was definitely not a small matter. As soon as the communication jade lit up, an urgent message came from it. "Palace lords, something bad has happened. Young Palace Lord has asked Ningfengxue to kill Yin Yang." F***CK. The 3 heavenly palace lords cursed in unison and stood up at the same time. Their 3 faces that were usually as steady as mountains had changed color. Despite all their calculations, there was still one flaw. They thought that they were not in control. In the next moment, the 3 of them moved in unison, tearing the space apart and flying out. Although there seemed to be only half a level of difference between a Saint Lord and a half-saint, according to the outside world's evaluation of Yin Yang's current combat strength, killing a 3rd-level Saint Lord in 3 strikes could only be done by a 4th-level Saint Lord. Did this not mean that Yin Yang was only a step away from a half-saint cultivator? Even if there was still a gap, it did not look like it was too great. However, in reality, the difference between the 2 was like heaven and earth. There was no comparison at all when there was a fundamental difference. Just like the time when Yin Yang had yet to step into the Saint Lord realm, he could indeed fight against a 1st or 2nd level Saint Lord cultivator based on his combat strength alone. However, as long as a Saint Lord cultivator executed a spatial sealing technique, Yin Yang would immediately be unable to do anything. Compared to the sage to be absolute law and the heavenly constitution, the gap of this one step was even greater. Once Ningfengxue made his move, it meant that Yin Yang would no longer have any chance of survival. The 3 heavenly palace lords' only hope was that Yin Yang would be lucky enough to survive before they arrived. As for Yin Yang being able to counterattack and kill a half-saint cultivator like Ningfengxue, the 3 of them had never once thought of it. "Dongfang, didn't you say that half-saint cultivators and above are not allowed to participate in the affairs of the sons of saint? This has been the rule for hundreds of thousands of years. Why is it that your son has made an exception? Now that the situation is like this, what do you want us to think? What right does Dongfang Xingchen have to invite a half-saint cultivator? Is there a hidden agenda behind this? Isn't this a bastard? Your Eastern Celestial Palace might as well just invite a saint to take action." The 2 heavenly palace lords had a bellyful of complaints. Dongfang Haoran had a bellyful of bitterness that was rarely vented, so he sighed endlessly towards the sky. "What can I say? I can say that I was also involved in this matter back then. But I can't say anything." The 3 palace masters rushed over together, but on the way, they unexpectedly sensed an extremely dispirited aura coming towards them. This aura was not unfamiliar to the 3 of them, and it was the target of their trip. The 3 of them tore the space apart and intercepted the person. Taking a closer look, they could not help exclaiming in unison, "It's really you!" The owner of the dispirited aura was none other than Ningfengxue. The 3 of them had initially decided that they would beat Ningfengxue up the moment they saw him, followed by a scolding and other subsequent punishments. However, looking at him now, the 3 of them were speechless. Ningfengxue's face was pale, and he looked miserable, like a lamp that had run out of oil. What shocked the 3 of them even more was that one of Ningfengxue's shoulders was empty. A half-saint cultivator had actually lost an arm? Well, what's going on? Who did this? The 3 heavenly palace lords were dumbfounded. It was even more shocking than when they received the news that Ning Fengxue had targeted Yun Yang. Who did it? Ning Fengxue smiled faintly. Palace Lord, do you think, under the circumstances where those old fellows didn't do anything, who else could do it? Dongfang Haoren's eyes widened. This could it be? Yun Yang, it can't be. Why not, it's him. Ning Fengxue chuckled bitterly and said, regarding Supreme Cloud, I have something to tell Palace Lord, and to ask for forgiveness. Coincidentally, meeting the three of you here has saved me a lot of trouble. After this subordinate will not return to the Heavenly Palace. After finding a place to talk, this old man will go directly to the Blood Soul Mountain. He sighed dispiritedly. What else can I say? All right. Who were the three Heavenly Palace Lords? Seeing Ning Fengshue's condition, they knew that something was wrong. They suppressed their doubts and waited quietly for Ning Fengshue's explanation. To them, no matter how great Yun Yang's improvement was, no matter how amazing he was, it was impossible for him to injure Ning Fengxue to this extent. Otherwise, the three of them would not have come together to save him. However, the truth was right before their eyes. The impossible had become possible. Nonetheless, it was still too shocking. Ning Fengxue, who was leading the way, looked haggard, sighed inwardly. Yun Yang, since you have the intention to reorganize the world, this old man will buy you half a day more time. I only hope that you know what you're doing. Yun Yang was covered in blood, but he still pretended to be calm as he walked slowly into Tonite City. Yun Yang's overflowing aura was still strong, still exuding an extremely sharp feeling. He did not stop to greet any guests along the way as he walked towards the inn he was staying at. Suddenly a shadow flashed. Beigong Wushuang landed in front of Yun Yang with two other men. Whether it was intentional or not, he exclaimed. Lord Supreme Cloud, are you hurt? Yun Yang stood still, his eyes half-lidded as he said faintly, It's just a small injury, nothing to worry about. Beigong Wushuang waved his hand, and two fragrant white pills flew over. These are my Northern Wasteland Demon Palace's 9 reincarnation life restoration pills. Whether it's for reviving the soul, prolonging life, or improving blood circulation, they're top-notch. Brother Yun quickly consumed them. Yun Yang grabbed it and tossed it into his mouth without a second thought, saying, Why are you here? Beigong Wushuang smiled. Brother Yun's display of power a few days ago turned the tables on us. They don't have the ability to monitor me now, so of course they can come as they please. However, I'm here to share some information with Brother Yun. I've never forgotten about our alliance. Yun Yang frowned. Them? Beigong Wushuang lowered his voice and said, Let's talk as we walk. Dongfang Xingchen and the others are waiting for news now. According to what I know, Dongfang Xingchen has already hired a half-saint to deal with you. As he spoke, he accompanied Yun Yang and carefully observed Yun Yang's expression. A sharp glint flashed across Yun Yang's eyes as he murmured thoughtfully, A half-saint? That's right. Even if Brother Yun's cultivation base is extraordinary, you still won't stand a chance against a half-saint. It's better to think of a plan as soon as possible. Beigong Wushuang's tone was filled with worry. As he spoke, he thought to himself, Looking at Yun Yang now, it's obvious that he's just gone through a tough battle. Although 3 people have been sent to assassinate him previously, the chances of the trio succeeding are minuscule as long as Yun Yang is able to react, judging from the capability he's shown previously. However, Yun Yang is obviously severely injured now. Where did he get this injury from? Could it be that Yun Yang has already fought with a half-saint outside just now? The real reason why he's injured is actually because he fought with a half-saint? The more Beigong Wushuang thought about it, the more reasonable it seemed. When he mentioned the half-saint just now, Yun Yang's expression had changed subtly, and the 2 words he had murmured, half-saint. These 3 words were quite meaningful, weren't they? Beigong Wushuang pondered. Initially, they had planned to watch the battle as a precaution, but how could they allow others to watch and offend a half-saint? Just as Lu Yongzai and the other 2 left, Dongfang Xingchen had already said that a half-saint had made a move. Therefore, they were all waiting for news here, completely unaware of Lu Yongzai and the other 2's escape. As for the actual situation of a half-saint's attack, they naturally had no idea either. If a half-saint was not allowed to watch, Going would be an affront to a half-saint's dignity. How was that any different from seeking death? However, Yun Yang had returned unscathed despite looking like he was in a bad state. As Supreme Cloud's ally, Beigong Wushuang naturally had to come over to check on the situation. In spite of this, Yin Yang's current attitude and reaction were thought-provoking and intriguing. If a half-saint had made a move, how could he still be alive? Beigong Wushuang's heart was in turmoil. Could he have let him go on purpose? Yin Yang walked forward with steady steps. Your information came too late. Too late. Beigong Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. Where are the other sons of Saint now? Yin Yang asked again. Although Yin Yang's face was pale and unsightly, his question was still filled with a murderous aura that could not be denied. They're all at Dongfang Xingchen's Supreme Tower now. Beigong Wushuang said. 7 to 8 of them have gathered together to discuss how to deal with you. Brother Yin, what do you plan to do next? I'll know how to cooperate with you. Yin Yang said coldly. I don't need you for now. It's fine if they don't make a move, but if anyone dares to, I'll kill them all and end it once and for all. As he spoke, he suddenly grunted, and a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Beigong, your 9 transformations life-reviving pill. Beigong Wushuang's gaze turned cold and ruthless as he smiled. Don't worry, Brother Yin. Although my 9 transformations life-reviving pill is miraculous, it will cause a clash in the blood qi for a certain period of time at the point of consumption. However, this is the magical aspect of the 9 transformations life-reviving pill. For those who are severely injured, it will stimulate the blood qi to fuse with the medicinal effect and circulate through the entire body. Won't the effects be faster and the healing speed be faster? Beigong Wushuang explained, but he was secretly delighted. Yin Yang was indeed injured, and it was not a light one at that. It was very likely that his core had been injured, and the loss of his combat power was inevitable. This was how it should be. It was already shocking enough to be able to stay alive in a battle with a half-saint. Yin Yang should not have any combat power left now. As he thought about it, evil thoughts surged. Chapter 1380. Beigong Wushuang fished out a piece of purple jade and passed it to Yin Yang. Brother Yin, this jade slip contains all the information about the Sons of Holy Science and their followers. Whether it's their cultivation base, combat strength, appearance, affiliation, cultivation method, killing technique, or even temperament, it's all described in detail. His smile was adorable and amiable. This is also part of our agreement. Yin Yang accepted it and said, Oh. Then, he inserted his deific consciousness into it to check, not suspecting anything. I've agreed to Brother Yun's conditions a long time ago. Our alliance is witnessed by heaven's oath. Beigong Wushuang chuckled. To be honest, Brother Yin, all the information about me and my followers is also included in this jade slip. There are very few omissions. Yin Yang laughed and said, I've witnessed Brother Beigong's sincerity. Let's have a pleasant cooperation. With the heaven's oath in place, the information could not be false. Yin Yang paused and said, Don't worry, Brother Beigong. I've always remembered the conditions I've agreed to. Just as he said this, Beigong Wushuang suddenly said faintly, Is that so? Before his words echoed in the air, he suddenly waved his hand and attacked with the other 2 people beside him. 2 Saint Lords, one on the left and one on the right, stabbed their sabers and swords into Yin Yang's left and right ribs. The moment the weapons entered his body, mystical qi exploded. The 2 men reacted quickly and let go of their weapons. Instead of retreating, they advanced, their palms landing hundreds of palm strikes on Yin Yang's body like a thunderstorm. On the other hand, Beigong Wushuang, who was standing right in front of him, flicked his hands, and a short sword materialized. It was laced with a strong air of death and destruction, as it pierced through Yin Yang's forehead. Then, he pressed his palm against Yin Yang's chest like a bolt of lightning. A gust of sinister mystical qi surged into his heart. Beigong Wushuang did not stop after his successful attack. He had already retreated 100 feet away. Looking at Yin Yang with a grin, he nodded and smiled. Brother Yin, I'm sorry. The trio's joint attack was so abrupt that Yin Yang, who was caught off guard, could not react in time. He froze as if he had been struck by lightning. His body had suddenly suffered so many heavy blows, but he did not seem to be able to react. Blood continued to flow from his mouth. He raised his head shakily, his eyes still filled with confusion. He looked at Beigong Wushuang and murmured, "Why?" Beigong Wushuang said apologetically, "Brother Yin, thank you for accepting my sincerity. Our cooperation has been genuine from the start. I also sincerely hope that if I can't kill you, you can help me get rid of a few opponents. If I can't kill you, then there's no harm, and we can benefit each other. But my ultimate goal is still to kill you. The only difference is that there is no chance. Here, Yang's word for me. Of. Beigong of Wushuang. And for Yang. Yun. Yin Yang of a smile. The light in his eyes quickly dissipated, and even his pupils continued to dilate. He muttered, "So this information is also fake? How can it be fake?" Beigong Wushuang said, "This information is all true. It can't be any more true. When I was interacting with Brother Yin, I didn't lie to Brother Yin at all. Otherwise, how could I have escaped the punishment of the heavens? I'm really sorry that a hero like Brother Yin actually died in my hands." Ha 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 ha. Yin Yang chuckled softly. Yes, I'm very disappointed as well. If I were to die in the hands of other sons of God, I could still accept it. But why did it have to be you, the sons of the Palace Lord, who want to kill me? Dongfang Xingchen is the same. Are you the same? Beigong Wushuang said apologetically, "I'm sorry. Rest in peace, Brother Yin. I'll chop off your head after you close your eyes. You won't feel any pain this way. It's the only thing I can do for you." Yin Yang chuckled. "You've never died. How do you know you won't feel pain?" Beigong Wushuang's expression changed. Why aren't you dead yet?" Yin Yang sighed. "I've disappointed you, holy son Beigong." He slowly straightened his body. First, the bloody hole on his forehead disappeared. Then, the serious injuries from the sword and saber disappeared as well. Under Beigong Wushuang's horrified gaze, Yin Yang shook his head and cracked his neck, producing a series of cracking noises. His right hand glowed, and a saber appeared in it. His left hand stretched out, and a flute appeared in the air. How are you still alive?" Beigong Wushuang was shocked. "Weren't you sealed by the demon race? How can you still use such a mystical art?" Yin Yang said lightly, "You really shouldn't be worrying about this. What you should be thinking about now is whether or not you'll die a painful death." In the next moment, Beigong Wushuang turned to flee. "Young Palace Lord, run." The two saint monarchs beside him rushed forward like mad tigers to stop them. A ferocious glint flashed in Yin Yang's eyes. The rage that he had been suppressing all this while erupted abruptly. Waving the purple jade flute in his left hand, two purple jade flutes materialized in the air and flew towards the two saints. Yin Yang himself chased after Beigong Wushuang without any resistance. Just as he gave chase, two soft popping sounds came from his left and right. The two saint lords had vanished into thin air. Their souls were destroyed, and they were beyond redemption. After killing the enemy in one strike, the two purple jade flutes in the air disappeared as well. Yin Yang, on the other hand, looked slightly pale. He kept the purple jade flute without a word. The purple jade flute's power was immense and invincible, but the mystical chi required to activate it was also unbelievably high. With Yin Yang's current mental and mystical energy, he could only activate the purple jade flute to attack, once even if he gave it his all. After that, he would need to wait for it to fully recover, before he could activate it again. If he forcefully activated it, it would inevitably hurt his foundation. When the purple jade flute moved just now, the mystical chi in his dantian was almost emptied. If it were not for the endless spiritual energy in his deific consciousness space that was replenishing his dantian, Yin Yang might not even have the strength to stand. Yin Yang activated the endless divine art, and followed behind Beigong Wushuang at a moderate pace. They were only a few hundred feet apart, but he did not go any closer, only making sure that he did not fall behind. He chased after Beigong Wushuang. At the same time, he felt the mystical chi in his dantian recovering rapidly. Today is a good day to settle debts of gratitude and enmity. Yin Yang felt the chi of karma gushing into his body. His gaze grew colder and colder. Yin Yang and Beigong Wushuang chased relentlessly, moving as fast as lightning, or as fast as a shooting star. Just then, a silhouette appeared to intercept them. Stop! A sword light came at Yun-Yang faster than the speed of sound. Yun-Yang snorted. Saber truth, destiny blade, door of life and death, was unleashed at his will. Although Beigong Wushuang was a son of saint, it was already the limit for his guards to have the strength of a third-level holy lord. With Yun-Yang's current ability, it was an absolute suppression. How could there be a fluke in killing him with a single strike? With a swing of the saber, the intruder perished. Wherever Yun-Yang passed, the remnant of the person's soul was annihilated as well. A third-level holy lord could not even delay Yun-Yang by a single step. His soul and spirit were both destroyed at once, beyond redemption. Beigong Wushuang fled in front, his expression full of fear. How could he not feel the dark clouds of death looming over his head? He was running for his life, hoping to get away from this cloud of death. However, with every step he took and every moment he fled, he felt the atmosphere of death grow thicker. Yet he had to run and struggle, with the god of death behind him. If he did not run or struggle, he would be destroyed with a snap of his fingers. He was filled with regret, indescribable regret. He should not have targeted Yun-Yang at all. With the previous agreement, as long as he did not take the initiative to target Yun-Yang, he would be fine even if all the sons of Saint died. At that time, he would perhaps be the biggest winner. Yet why did he have to take things so hard and make a move? Yun-Yang had been following behind him. Although he was chasing after him, he did not strike a fatal blow. Beigong Wushuang knew very well that it was not that Yun-Yang was not strong enough, but if Yun-Yang attacked, he would die. However, Yun-Yang did not make a move, only following him at a steady pace. His murderous intent grew thicker and thicker bit by bit. Along the way, Beigong Wushuang's followers continued to charge towards Yun-Yang, the continent's hero. However, there were no exceptions. No one was able to block Yun-Yang's path, and all of them perished without a trace of their lives left. Yun-Yang's gaze grew colder. At this moment, he unleashed the peerless power of the endless divine art, activating the divine edge with all his might, and wielding the divine edge. The true power of the divine edge was revealed. All weapons that came into contact with it were shattered instantly. All the experts who charged over perished under the divine edge. Once the blade was unleashed, life and death were decided. There was no telling who would win or lose. There was no mercy at all. Yun-Yang followed closely behind Beigong Wushuang, staying close to him. Those who came to stop him perished under his blade. The journey finally came to an end. The Supreme Tower's courtyard was already in sight. It was the residence of Dongfang Xingchen and the other sons of Saint. Along the way, the commotion caused by the battle had long alerted the people in the courtyard. Silhouettes flew into the air. Dongfang Xingchen stood at the forefront, dressed in snow-white robes. Looking up, he saw Beigong Wushuang running for his life. Seeing Dongfang Xingchen and the others from afar, Beigong Wushuang screamed, "Save me! Quick, save me!" Dongfang Xingchen, Yu Jinxiao, and the rest looked from afar. Behind Beigong Wushuang, a purple silhouette slowly approached amidst a cloud of dust. The newcomer was dressed in a purple robe and wore a mask. Who else could it be if not Universe Supreme Yun-Yang? Amidst the dust, Beigong Wushuang's last follower forcefully interposed between the two, waving his blade and striking. Lord Supreme Cloud, who was advancing forcefully, waved his long blade. No one could see how he executed the move, but this saint was instantly sliced into two. As Yun-Yang's figure moved smoothly past the two halves of the corpse, a stream of soul energy was about to rise. Suddenly, an emerald green vine emerged from Yun-Yang's body. It was as transparent as jade, sweeping through the air and wrapping up the spirit body, retrieving it. In midair, the spirit body let out a blood-curdling scream before disappearing completely. Then the emerald green vine disappeared without a trace. Yun-Yang, who had killed his enemy with a single strike, continued to move forward, chasing after Beigong Wushuang at a distance of 300 to 400 feet. Beigong Wushuang's movements gradually slowed down. Panting heavily, he suddenly pounced on the high wall and cried out, "Save me!" In front of him was the other son of Devil Palace of the Northern Wilderness, Nantianyin. Based on Beigong Wushuang's cultivation base, Running from the scene of the incident to here should not even be considered a trivial matter. At the very least, he should not be panting like this. It was as if someone had done that to him for a very, very long time, and his body felt severely drained. The root cause was that his heart had broken down, and he was in a constant state of anxiety. Naturally, he was in an extremely bad condition. Nantian Yun's expression changed, and he was about to step aside. As a fellow son of Devil Palace, even if he did not get along with Beigong Wushuang on the surface, he would not kick him when he was down at such a critical juncture. Just then, an indifferent voice rang out from behind Beigong Wushuang. Beigong Wushuang, don't think that you've escaped. I will never go back on my word. Open your eyes wide and prepare yourself. Feel the taste of death, whether it's painful or not. Watch carefully. This is what I'm saying to you. The saber light flashed. The first to bear the brunt of the attack was Nantian Yun. His face was filled with confusion and panic as he flew up without any warning. Before his soul had even appeared, the emerald green vine that everyone had already noticed earlier appeared once again and swept him away. Nantian Yun's head spun in the air as it fell. Beigong Wushuang subconsciously stretched out his hands and caught Nantian Yun's head in his palms. His eyes met Nantian Yun's wide and empty eyes, and he felt an inexplicable fear welling up in his heart. Beigong Wushuang shuddered and loosened his grip. Nantian Yun's head fell to the ground at once and rolled away. The sound of the head falling was not very loud, but it seemed to ring directly in everyone's hearts. No one was not shocked. All the sons of Saint, without exception, shuddered and looked down hurriedly. They saw Nantian Yun's head rolling a few times on the ground before it stopped, and looked up at the sky. This was the first son of Saint to die in Night City tonight. Yun Yang had killed Nantian Yun with a single strike of his saber. In that instant, all the saints present were dumbfounded. Are you satisfied now, Beigong Wushuang? Nantian Yun's death means I've fulfilled my promise to you. You can go on your way with peace of mind. The saber light shone even brighter. It was as if it was shimmering with splendor. Flowing lights and vibrant colors flew up. Wherever the saber light passed, a large, transparent hole immediately appeared in Beigong Wushuang's chest. His head immediately flew into the sky, and a perfectly round column of blood spurted out from his neck. His body swayed a few times, and he collapsed to the ground. At this moment, after personally witnessing such a bloody scene, even Dongfang Xingchen's eyes were filled with fear of the situation spiraling out of control. Other than being a holy son, Beigong Wushuang was also the son of the Northern Wilderness Demon Palace's palace lord. However, Yun Yang had killed him without any hesitation. Doesn't that mean to me? He had updated it too late, and had written in the wrong direction. He had written that Beigong was not dead, and that Yun Yang could not bear to see the three palace lords die without a bloodline. After he had finished writing, the more he read, the more he felt that something was amiss, so he had deleted everything and killed it directly. Remember the website of the mobile version. Chapter 486. Killing Son of Saint Beheading Beigong. Page 1/1. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 1381. Yun Yang walked over slowly, one step at a time. His purple robes looked like he had walked out of a boundless sea of blood. In the eyes of the crowd, he was glowing like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. At the same time, an overwhelming murderous aura surrounded him. Every step he took on the ground produced a clear sound, like the war drums of the Grim Reaper, ringing heavily in the hearts of the crowd. When he was about 100 feet away from the wall, Yun Yang finally stopped in his tracks. Lifting his head, he nodded slowly and said, "Everyone is here." There were about 30 to 40 people up there, all glaring angrily at him. Among them, the ones who attracted the most attention were the chosen: Dongfang Xingchen, Yu Zhenxiao, and Xinyu, Shimen Huanyu, Jiao Shixiang, Feng Patian, and the demonic palace of the north. Yun Yang rubbed his nose, surprised to find that the chosen of the demonic palace of the north was nowhere to be seen. Out of the 4 chosen of the demonic palace of the north, other than the 2 he had killed, the remaining 2 were not here. Yun Yang had a very clear understanding now. Anyone who was here now wanted to kill him. Therefore, It was reasonable for him to kill anyone who tried to kill him. Yin Yang. Dongfang Xingchen bellowed in exasperation. How dare you? Dongfang Xingchen had always considered himself to be the next palace lord of the Eastern Celestial Palace, and he was also proud of this identity. He had never believed that anyone would dare to kill the son of the current palace lord of the Eastern Celestial Palace, be it the chosen or anyone else. This was his bottom line, but now, he dared not think about it anymore. Beigong Wushuang's status was similar to his, or even identical. Then, how could Yun Yang, who dared to kill Beigong Wushuang, not dare to kill him? Another chosen of the other three palaces, the son of the current palace lord? Yun Yang raised his eyes tiredly and said faintly, "Shut up. I've already killed him. Why are you still screaming?" Dongfang Xingchen only felt an unprecedented murderous aura rushing towards him. His mouth and nose could not help but freeze, unable to speak. Yun Yang looked at Dongfang Xingchen, a trace of pity in his eyes, and said faintly, "Dongfang Xingchen, do you know that among all the chosen, the one I don't want to kill the most is you?" Dongfang Xingchen's face was pale, and he forced a smile. Lord Supreme Cloud is too kind. Xingchen has always seen Lord Supreme Cloud as a role model. Yin Yang smiled faintly. "I don't want to kill you because you're Dongfang Haoran's son. Palace Lord Dongfang has taken good care of me. If it's not necessary, I don't want to upset him. No matter how high one's cultivation base is, or how open-minded one is, the pain of losing one's son is still an unbearable price to pay. So, from that night onwards, even though your life was clearly in my hands, I didn't make a move." Or, did you and the rest of you really think that I wouldn't dare to kill you because of your identities as saints? The so-called saint is nothing in my eyes. He's not even worth a fart. But of all the things you shouldn't have done, you shouldn't have refused to give up. Yin Yang shook his head and sighed. There's a saying in this world that goes, "Don't turn back until you hit the wall." If it were someone else, they would have sent more than a dozen Saint Lords to kill me, and they still couldn't kill me. Even if they sent a fourth-level Saint Lord, they would have returned empty-handed. Dongfang Xingchen's face grew paler and paler. His lips trembled as he looked at Yun Yang, his eyes filled with fear. He could hear that Yin Yang's murderous aura was growing stronger as he spoke. But you're different. You're very tenacious, you're persistent. You keep fighting despite your failures. You've hit the wall repeatedly, yet you still refuse to give up. Now even a saint has been invited by you. I'm really puzzled. Why do you want to kill me at all costs? Is it just because I threaten your position? From the beginning to the end, you've never thought about who the person you want to kill is, or what he's done for this continent. The only thing you think about is yourself, your own interests, and your own position. What hero, what hero? In your eyes, they're all worthless. Yin Yang's voice grew more agitated as he said, "Today, I suddenly understand that I shouldn't have let you go. I've let you go again and again. Not only have I let myself down, I've let your father down as well. If you continue to live, your father will only suffer more in the future, and bear more humiliation. It's better to get the pain over with than to prolong it. He can't make up his mind to kill you," Yin Yang said quietly. "Then I'll help him." It was not only Dongfang Xingchen, but Shimen Huanyu and the other saints were also pale. Yin Yang's words were not only directed at Dongfang Xingchen, but also at the few of them. Dongfang Xingchen still had the identity of the Eastern Celestial Palace's young lord, Dongfang Haoran's son. They did not even have this connection. And Xingyu's eyes flashed with ruthlessness as she said, "Let's go together and kill him." Shimen Huanyu shouted at the same time, "Perhaps no one is his opponent in a one-on-one fight, but let's go together. I don't believe that we can't defeat him alone. If we don't risk our lives now, when will we?" With the command, more than 40 top-notch experts in Supreme Tower brandished their weapons in unison and charged towards Yun Yang from all directions as they cheered for a fight. Yun Yang hollered, "Good timing." With a flash of purple light, Yun Yang did not use the purple jade flute anymore. Instead, he hung it on his belt and held the divine edge in his hand. Like a tiger charging into a flock of sheep, he charged forward without backing down. As the attacks rained down from all directions, the blade of heavens will suddenly expanded, turning into a long saber that was no less than 100 feet long. Like a bolt of lightning in the clear sky, it swept past, and in the blink of an eye, 98 slashes followed. Clang, clang, clang. It was only a moment of contact, but the countless weapons of the saints broke into pieces without exception. Since Yin Yang's debut, there had never been any weapon that could compete with the divine edge. Today was no exception. As countless weapons shattered, blood spurted into the sky. It had only been a moment, but the Holy Sun's side had already suffered heavy casualties. Yin Yang's cultivation base was far superior, and he was complemented by the divine blade. Coupled with the endless divine art, and his marvelous saber skills, who could stop him? He was invincible. A moment later, a series of tragic cries rang out. "Saints, leave quickly!" Everyone present was a top-notch cultivator. They quickly came to a conclusion. They could not do anything to Yun Yang even if they were to gang up on him. At most, they could only slow him down slightly. As the leaders of their side, when were the saints going to leave if not now? But leave? An inexplicable expression flashed across the faces of the chosen saints. If they still could not kill Yun Yang this time, then they would not have another chance in this lifetime. Moreover, they had completely offended him. Even if they could temporarily escape today, what about tomorrow? From the lofty saints, would they become a street rat that everyone hated? Facing a supreme cloud who could step into the bound of universe's pinnacle saint cultivation base at any time, who could rest easy? Shimen Huanyu shouted, "Attack together!" Dongfang Xingchen drew his sword and hollered, "Kill him!" All the chosen were of one mind at this moment, and they all rushed out together. Naturally, the cultivation base of the saints was not low. Dongfang Xingchen's cultivation base was the cream of the crop, having already reached the pinnacle of a second-level Saint Lord. Leading the charge, his side's morale was greatly boosted. 46 Saint Lords surrounded Yun Yang and fought in circles. Their fists, palms, claws, and legs were all exerted with all their might. Facing the sea of attacks formed by the world's top-notch combat power, Yun Yang was not the slightest bit afraid. Saber truth. Destiny blade was executed slowly, each move like a bolt of lightning that could split the heaven and earth. The battle fell into a stalemate. Although the chances of 40-odd people killing Yun Yang were slim, their combined combat power was clear for all to see. It was impossible for Yun Yang to defeat so many people in such a short amount of time, not to mention that the other party had all decided to fight with their lives on the line. Instead, Yun Yang seemed to be at a disadvantage. At this moment, a shadow appeared on top of the wall. His eyes shone brightly as he glared at Yun Yang. His eyes, which were like dead ashes, were paying close attention to this huge battle. His entire body was like a shadow that was attached to the top of the wall. In the next moment, he disappeared from the top of the wall and turned into nothingness. Yun Yang did not take a single step back. He countered every move that came his way, his saber light flashing as he protected himself and blocked the enemy's attacks. Even though he was surrounded and attacked by countless experts who were giving their all, wishing that they could kill Yun Yang with a single strike, Yun Yang's heart was still as calm as ice. The weapons, fists, and palms that came at him from all directions were like projections that had been rehearsed in his mind beforehand. He was crystal clear about the subsequent changes of each move and style. His heart was like a calm well, reflecting the enemy's attacks clearly. In fact, the state of mind of every single person when they attacked, and the changes in their emotions could be reflected in this clear well. It was a subtle feeling that everything in the world was under his control. This is the pinnacle state of mind of a Saint Lord. Everything is in the heart, untainted by the mundane world. Realization dawned upon Yun Yang. At that moment, a silhouette pounced forward like a bolt of lightning. Where Yun Yang's long saber passed, the other party's weapon had already been sliced in half. At the same time, he had a feeling that this person would not retreat, but advance instead, charging into Yun Yang's embrace in a desperate attempt to fight with his life on the line. Yun Yang wanted to kill the other party with his saber, but as the thought flashed through his mind, he had an ominous feeling. It was as if there was a great threat that had been hiding in the dark and had yet to make a move, but it was glaring at him like a lion preying on a rabbit. Therefore, the saber's momentum was unexpectedly slow. When experts exchanged blows, a split second was the difference between life and death. The silhouette took advantage of this slight delay to successfully charge into Yin Yang's saber web. While he was slashed by the web of saber web that protected him, he threw a palm strike at Yin Yang's chest with all his might. With a roar, Yin Yang chopped the person into two, but he could not help but stagger and take a step back. Seeing that their side had gained the upper hand, the 40 or so experts who were involved in the siege surged forward in high spirits. Although Yin Yang's strength was unparalleled, there was a limit to one's strength. The moment just now had proven this point. The best opportunity to kill Yin Yang was now. While Yin Yang endured the heavy palm strike, he felt the pressure multiply, and the situation of the battle took a sudden turn for the worse. Yin Yang, who was forced into a disadvantageous position, threw out 2 styles and 4 styles at the same time, attempting to turn the tide. However, he could not help but take 3 steps back under the relentless attack. Seeing that Yin Yang was at a disadvantage, the opponent pressed forward again. Even the broken sabers, swords, and weapons that had been broken were used to form a dense killing net in front of Yin Yang. It was as if thousands of soldiers were attacking. The sabers slashed, the blades slashed, and the swords pierced through the heart. "Kill him! Kill him!" Dongfang Xingchen bellowed. "Art of blazing blood!" With a loud boom, a second-grade Saint Monarch pounced forward without hesitation, forcefully resisting Yin Yang's divine edge with his body of flesh and blood. While his body was pierced by the divine edge, he detonated his own body. It was a self-detonation technique of a Saint Lord. Yin Yang grunted and retreated again. This time, he even began to stagger a little. However, the emerald green vine that had appeared repeatedly appeared out of thin air once more. With a twist and turn in the air, it had already collected all the souls in the field. Faced with this scene, Dongfang Xingchen and the others were inexplicably shocked, but they had no time to think about it. If Yin Yang did not die now, it would be them. Whether or not their souls were destroyed was no longer the main point. They were only stunned for a moment before they resumed their attacks, this time stronger than before. Yin Yang, on the other hand, almost started cursing. Emmy, this little glutton, actually came out at this time to take advantage of the situation. Can't you look at the situation and judge the situation? Emmy, Yin Yang bellowed in his consciousness. You, can't you wait for a while? Do you really think I'm at a disadvantage and have no time to deal with the remnant souls? This young master is wholeheartedly setting up a trap to lure out the fellow who's hiding in the corner and has yet to make a move. You, on the other hand, swung your vines to collect the spoils of war. What should I do if I startle him? Aya. Emmy knew that it had made a mistake. Its leaves and vines curled into a ball at once, covering its face as it cried out softly. Ah, Aya. Yin Yang sighed in frustration. Like owner, like pet. Yin Yang's way of doing things had always been 9 feet high, and he was in no position to criticize Emmy. At least, he was not in the position to be so righteous. The strange shadow that had been lurking at the end of the bridge had already infiltrated the battlefield. Following the Saint Lord's battle cries, it moved among the Saint Lord's shadows without anyone noticing. From this shadow, it moved to another shadow, and then to another, probably approaching Yin Yang step by step. Its current position was extremely close to Yin Yang. It was only a step away from Yin Yang. In fact, it was already ready to attack. However, at this delicate juncture, a sudden throbbing feeling that originated from the soul emerged. The strange shadow shuddered, almost losing its soul. Chapter 1382. This was a unique fluctuation that belonged to the soul. If it was not the purest form of the soul, it would be impossible to notice it. Even if the Saint Lords in front of him had a high cultivation base, they did not know much about this kind of aura. However, this strange silhouette was unimaginably aware of this fluctuation. The shadowy figure didn't dare to act rashly. He cast a furtive glance over, only to see a dark green vine coiling around the area, coiling, and actually collecting all the souls of the fallen sage monarchs. In the blink of an eye, the dark green vine disappeared as well. Although it was only for a moment, the silhouette was truly frightened out of his wits. At this moment he, who was almost out of his wits, burrowed into the ground without saying a word. Not only did he not dare to come out again, he simply left through the underground. It would be more appropriate to describe it as fleeing for his life. Yin Yang brandished the divine edge in his hand, performing the divine edge in a series of strikes, continuing to create a state where he was at a disadvantage and extremely passive. However, what he felt was that the source of the powerful threat had inexplicably disappeared. Yin Yang knew at once that Emmy's action just now had alerted the enemy, and he could not help being speechless for a long time. The trap that he had painstakingly set up for a long time had been eaten up by this little glutton. He had even confirmed what the threat was: the demon soul. Only the demon soul could cause such a degree of threat to him. Now was a godsend opportunity. As long as the soul demon targeted him and was locked down by him, Emmy would attack. With Emmy's enhanced natural deterrence to the soul, it would be able to devour the fellow in a very short period of time without leaving anything behind. However, the opportunity to devour him had been lost. Sigh! Yin Yang let out a long howl, his anger raging, but he could not bear to punish Emmy. However, there were so many punching bags in front of him. If he did not make use of the trash, when would he die? The first 7 styles and 14 styles of the divine edge were unleashed consecutively for the first time. The earth-shattering and earth-shaking power filled the entire firmament. The situation that was thought to be difficult to reverse was reversed in an instant, taking a sharp turn. Dongfang Haoran and the others escorted Ning Fengxue and found a remote and quiet cave to treat his injuries. Unfortunately, the 3 palace masters could only stare blankly at Ning Fengxue's severed arm. Even if they used their best techniques and elixirs, even if the 3 palace masters joined hands, they still couldn't help Ning Fengxue recover. They couldn't help but look at each other in shock. However, with the 3 of them working together, they were still able to help Ning Fengxue recover some of her mental strength. Seeing that Ning Fengxue's complexion was rosy and her life was no longer in danger, the 3 of them finally relaxed. What's going on? This matter is really like a child losing his mother. It's a long story. Ning Fengxue sighed sadly. This time, we've really lost too much face. Without waiting for the 3 of them to ask, Ning Fengxue told them everything that had happened after he met Yin Yang. The 3 of them listened with solemn expressions, a strange feeling rising in their hearts. Ning Fengxue concluded in the end. From what I can see, although Yin Yang seems to have gone on a killing spree these few days and is ruthless, he's actually still holding back. He doesn't want things to get out of hand. He doesn't even want to kill too many people. However, asking me to help him in the end has directly triggered Yin Yang's long-hidden killing intent. He sighed softly. I'm afraid that Supreme Cloud is really going to go on a killing spree next. The 3 of them were stunned. Beigong Liuli murmured. He's been holding back. He's completely enraged. He's really going to go on a killing spree. The 3 of them looked at each other and suddenly cried out in unison. This is bad. Dongfang Haoran was the first to yell angrily. Ning Fengxue, you old thing. You already knew that Supreme Cloud was going to go on a killing spree, yet you told us the whole story in such detail. You're obviously buying time here. Ning Fengxue coughed and said, Palace Lord, you said that I've told you the whole story in detail. Is there anything wrong with my words? If the 3 palace lords don't know Yin Yang's background and recklessly go against him, won't you end up like me? The 3 palace lords' mouths were twisted in disbelief. This old thing, his words were reasonable, but he was still doing it on purpose. If he did not want to waste time, he could have just said, Go quickly. Supreme Cloud has the means to kill a half-step saint. He's about to go on a killing spree. Then, one of the 3 of them had to go. Leaving 2 behind to watch Ning Fengxue's wounds was more than enough. As long as one of the 3 went, the situation could be contained, and at least a few lives could be saved. The 3 of them said that they did not mind, but Yin Yang was their son after all. Even if they had to cripple his cultivation base to nurture him, still, it was better than death. As for going against Yin Yang, whether Ning Fengxue said that Yin Yang had a trump card or not, the 3 of them would not attack him. At this moment, Beigong Liuli's face suddenly turned pale. and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression changed again and again, and he reached out to take out the 2 jade pendants, only to see that they had been completely shattered, and their surfaces were covered with cracks that looked like spider webs. The moment he took them out, the 2 jade pendants turned into a pile of powder with a soft crack. Baigong Liuli's face turned green. He was completely dumbfounded. Dongfang Haoran asked carefully, "What happened?" Baigong Liuli looked at the pile of powder in his palm and said expressionlessly, "Wushuang is dead. Tianyin is also dead. They both died in a manner that left no trace of their lives." Shimen Fanfu and Dongfang Haoran's expressions changed drastically. A son of heaven had fallen? And 2 of them had died at once. One of them was the son of the Northern Wilderness demonic palace lord, Baigong Wushuang. Their breathing gradually quickened as they looked at each other. Without another word, they tore the space apart and flew out. Baigong Liuli did not rush over. He just sat there, his eyes quietly looking at the 2 piles of powder in his palm, motionless and speechless for a long time. Out of nowhere, there seemed to be 2 adorned little children running over with a smile, one soft hand hugging his right leg and acting like a spoiled child. "Daddy!" The other chubby child hugged his left leg and raised his tender little face. "Master!" Baigong Liuli's lips trembled and his entire body trembled. His originally tall and burly body was now bent like an old man with 1 foot in the grave. His entire body was curled up. Ning Fengxue sighed inwardly and said in a low voice, "Palace Lord, it's better to go take a look. There are 4 sons of saints in the demonic palace. There are still 2 more. What if?" Baigong Liuli raised his head, flames burning in his eyes, evaporating all the mist. He took a deep breath and said calmly, "The remaining 2 are Huan Wenyuan and Lanting. Lanting is indifferent to fame and fortune and won't fight for it. Whatever he says, he'll just follow what others say and won't put it into action. Although Huan Wenyuan is born with a cheap mouth and an idiot who wants to see the world in chaos, he has his own judgment of right and wrong. Among the 4, he's the only one who has never thought of becoming the palace lord. The 2 of them definitely won't die because they'll only scold Supreme Cloud a few times at most, but they'll never really do anything to him." His voice was calm and weak, like a whisper in the wind. Chapter 1383. Ning Fengxue said softly, "But there's a reason for this. Supreme Cloud can't be blamed. Palace Lord, you can't take it out on him." "Can't be blamed," Baigong Liuli murmured. His eyes had lost focus as he stared blankly ahead. He did not say a word as he turned into a statue. If Supreme Cloud was to be blamed, and he could seek revenge from him, Baigong Liuli would not be so upset. However, he could not be blamed. It was his own son who had sought death, and the whole thing was carried out under the planning of the 3 great palace masters. How could he seek revenge? Ning Fengxue watched from the side, clearly seeing the burly palace lord of the Northern Wilderness demonic palace, who had always been tall and sturdy, sitting there in a daze without moving. However, his jet-black hair was turning white bit by bit. Ning Fengxue turned her head, stood up, and quietly left the cave. She quietly sat down at a place far away from the cave entrance. At this moment, he actually had no courage at all. He didn't dare, nor could he bear to sit in front of his father, who had just lost his own son. He could not face the guilt in his heart. He was the one who had stalled for time. Ning Fengxue heaved a long sigh into the sky. He could not understand why such an indomitable hero could not teach his own son and disciple well. Didn't they say that the father is a hero and the son is a good man? Ning Fengxue looked at the sky. Why is it like this? Saber light soared into the sky. As it swept across heaven and earth, there was also a surge of blood light that permeated the surroundings. This was the first time Yun Yang had unleashed his full power since he had ascended to the bound of universe. It was also the moment when his murderous aura was at its strongest and angriest. Ever since the saber light shone, the blood light that soared into the sky had never stopped. 1 slash, 2 slashes. I understand that you want to kill me. For the sake of Supreme Heaven Pavilion, for the sake of your goals, I understand that you feel threatened. I understand that you've worked so hard for so many years and are worried that I'll replace you. I understand that. Yin Yang roared as he swung his saber. All the reasons you think you have, all the conspiracies you have created, all the groundless crimes you have committed, you can have them all. But at least you have a fig leaf. With a fig leaf, I still think it's within the rules. No matter how unwilling I am, I'll still force myself to give you face, and give you 3 palace masters face. I'll play with you. The 3 great heavenly palaces have protected this world for a long time. I am willing to give their descendants another chance. I hope you will stop. It doesn't matter to me, it doesn't matter. It's just a little grievance. But now, even after I've revealed my identity, you still want to attack me. You won't stop until you're dead. Previously, you pretended that you didn't know anything, and that everything was within the rules to justify yourselves. But today, he brazenly attacked me, the publicly acknowledged hero of the continent. Even death cannot atone for their crimes. We will not show them mercy. I've never been angry at you for attacking me. In this world, those who are not envied by others are mediocre. I've never been afraid, nor have I cared how many opponents I have or how strong they are. However, you shouldn't have attacked the continent's hero, disregarding his contributions to this continent. If you were only angry because you attacked me, all of you would have been dead a few days ago. Now I've confirmed one thing. The reason you've laid your hands on the heroes is because of your own selfishness and personal interests. There's no other reason. So, why should I be merciful and leave you to cause trouble in this world? I can imagine that after me, as long as there are others who stand in your way and hinder your benefits, you'll still come up with all sorts of excuses, reasons, and unscrupulous methods to target them. No matter who they are, what they stand for, or what they've done for humanity, it doesn't matter to you. They'll only be your stumbling blocks that must be removed as soon as possible. Is the safety of the entire human race not as important as a seat of yours? Go on your way. Yin Yang questioned furiously as he slashed his saber again and again. One after another, heads flew into the air amidst the flashes of saber light amidst his furious questioning. Blood splattered all over the ground. More than 40 attackers, including the sons of saints, had died by now. The survivors were barely holding on. Each of them was sweating profusely, their faces filled with despair. If they had known Yin Yang's true strength, they would never have dared to provoke him. A Saint Lord was already the pinnacle of this world. Even if they did not attach themselves to the 3 heavenly palaces, they would still be a lord wherever they went. What they coveted was the tens of thousands of years of glory, after attaching themselves to the sons of saints. However, compared to the threat of death, that little bit of glory was nothing. The acknowledged heroes of the continent, the meritorious officials who have contributed a lot to the bound of universe. Are you going to kill them just like that? Who do you think you are? Yin Yang roared angrily. Just because you're the sons of saints? Bullsh*T. Your father is going to slaughter all of you sons of saints today. The saber light flashed. Crack, 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 the void ruptured. 9 streaks of saber light flashed in the sky, and another 9 saint monarchs' heads fell off in unison. Blood splattered as the sky was dyed crimson. Jia Shixiang let out a blood-curdling scream. His entire body was split into 2 from his waist to his abdomen. Before he could activate his saint energy to heal himself, the dense saber chi that had already invaded his body had already exploded in both sides of his body. A few cracking sounds could be heard, but it was enough to turn Jia Shixiang's physical body into nothingness. A ball of spiritual energy had just appeared when it was devoured by the green shadow. With the fall of a large number of saints, the 3rd son of saint had finally appeared. What you want are benefits and positions. I can't give it to you. Yin Yang's voice reverberated through the clouds. What I can give is justice for myself, justice for the people of the world. Give justice to all the human heroes who fought against the demons. From today onwards, whoever dares to do such a shady business shall be executed immediately. 9 familial exterminations. Heaven and earth, all shall be executed. Boom! And Sinew let out a shrill cry as her head exploded. Her body then turned into dust under the continuous saber light. Her spiritual energy was also annihilated by the green shadow, leaving no trace behind. The 4th son of saint. Ha 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 ha. Yin Yang guffawed. His aura did not diminish, as he continued to wield his saber like lightning. Conspiracies and schemes. How effective can they be in the face of absolute power? Shimen Huanyu, die for your father. The saber light converged into a long river that surged forward, aiming straight for the other palace lord's legitimate son, Shimen Huanyu. Shimen Huanyu's face was pale, his eyes filled with fear as he retreated. He had long become accustomed to his manners. The 5 guards beside him hollered and charged forward with all their might. Son of Saint, leave quickly. This is your last chance. One of the East Celestial Palace's Saint Lords seized the opportunity when Yin Yang attacked Shimen Huanyu with his saber, becoming one with his sword, using the purest and most direct method to kill Yin Yang. As he struck with his sword, he roared, "If you don't leave now, it'll really be too late." Dongfang Xingqian, Yu Jinxiao, and Feng Patian unleashed their final attack together. Without waiting for the result, they turned and ran. Behind the 3 of them, there were dozens of guards who charged towards Yin Yang, as if they did not care about their own lives, attempting to stop him for a moment and fight for a chance for the 3 of them to escape. The 3 of them found a slim chance of survival and fled quickly. However, Shimen Huanyu, who bore the brunt of the attack, was still locked by Yin Yang's saber light. There was no room for him to escape, and he could only cry out in pain, "Save me." "Don't worry. Not only will you not live, they won't be able to escape either." Facing the desperate counterattack of the enemies before him, the saber in Yin Yang's hand disappeared abruptly, replaced by a purple glow. The purple jade flute was in his hand. With the flute in his hand, Yin Yang roared and used the flute as a sword. The long-awaited "what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world" reappeared. With a loud boom, purple light poured into the sky. The entire sky was filled with endless purple sword energy, as if thousands of lightning bolts had exploded at the same time. It was as if the Milky Way had descended from the heavens, descending upon the mortal realm. Cries of agony could be heard as the ultimate killing move appeared once again. After Yin Yang executed this move, he completely disregarded the sword's momentum. He separated his hands and tore the space in front of him apart, taking a step forward to meet Feng Potion's horrified face. Swoosh! After the saber strike, Feng Patian was split into 2 halves from his head to his crotch. The saber energy exploded immediately, further splitting the 2 halves of his body apart. Then, there was still a flash of green light that engulfed him. Yin Yang did not stop, tearing the space apart once more. His saber strike was like a thunderbolt, causing Yu Jinxiao and Dongfang Xingqian to spit blood and stagger several hundred feet back. Behind him, using the purple jade flute to unleash a move capable of slaughtering the entire world, it engulfed Shimen Huanyu and the other saint monarchs. Although Shimen Huanyu was blocked by several people at the back, what he saw was everyone in front of him being engulfed by the purple intent and strangely turned into dust. Thereafter, under his horrified gaze, the purple jade flute struck his head as expected. With a soft bang, Shimen Huanyu did not even have the time to let out a scream before he turned into nothingness. In fact, it was not only Shimen Huanyu, but all the surrounding experts who were involved in the siege had all turned into ashes under the ultimate killing move and the boundless power of the purple jade flute. Those who were killed by the purple jade flute would not even have the chance to manifest their spiritual force. Their bodies and souls would be destroyed immediately. Emmy, who was in the deific consciousness space, was hopping mad, but it dared not go against the purple jade flute. Just as the soul demon was afraid of Emmy, like a mouse avoiding a cat, Emmy was also terrified of the purple jade flute. The last survivor, Yu Jinxiao, spat out mouthfuls of blood as he retreated, his face pale. Dongfang Xingqian's white robe, that was usually whiter than frost, was now so dirty that it could no longer be seen. His hair was disheveled and his eyes were filled with terror as he shouted, Yin Yang, you can't kill me. You've received my father's great kindness. Are you being ungrateful by killing me? How will you face my father if you kill me? Spare my life. I'll be eternally grateful for your kindness in this lifetime. Yin Yang's murderous intent was boiling. Spare you? I've killed 60 to 70 people here. And I've already killed 6 of the 8 holy sons who were involved in the conspiracy against me. Why should I spare you? The young palace lord who attacked me the most ruthlessly and spared no effort. On what basis? Is your identity more honorable than Shimen Huanyu and Beigong Wushuang? Yun Yang said coldly. Other than being Dongfang Haoran's son, what else do you have? Who do you think you are? With a son like you, Dongfang Haoran will only be shamed for 10,000 years and have no face to see anyone. Today I'll get rid of you for him. Yun Yang sprung up, his saber light shining brightly like the sun as his murderous intent intensified. It was at this moment. The void behind Dongfang Xingchen was torn apart. Yu Jinxiao struck out with his sword. Go, don't let master die. Dongmen Xingchen let out a loud cry the instant the saber light slashed down. He suddenly kicked Yu Jinxiao, who was guarding him, into the air. Then he crossed his palms and slapped Yu Jinxiao's back. Yu Jinxiao cried out in bewilderment, but he flew up like a shield to meet Yin Yang's blade. His eyes were filled with disbelief, despair, and hatred as he cried out hoarsely, Dongfang Xingchen. However, Yin Yang's resolute strike had already landed. There was no turning back, and he was dead. In midair, the two people who had suddenly appeared from the torn space had the time to shout, Stop! Both of them cried out at the same time, but only one of them managed to finish his sentence. It was West Heaven St. Palace's Shimen Fafu. The other person who had stopped midway was Dongfang Haoran. He rushed over hurriedly, tearing the void several times in a row, almost surpassing his own limits. When he finally arrived at the scene of the incident after tearing the last crack, he hurriedly tried to escape. He only managed to shout one word, but what he saw was his son kicking his disciple and sending Yu Jinxiao to Yin Yang's saber with both palms in order to escape. As for Dongfang Haoran, he made use of the recoil to turn and escape. Without looking back, he was already tens of thousands of feet away. His disciple, on the other hand, had been unprepared to be kicked out because he was trying to protect him. Looking at the scene, Dongfang Haoran felt as if someone had hammered his head. He saw stars and could not utter the last word no matter how hard he tried. In the blink of an eye, Yin Yang had crushed Yu Jinxiao's physical body into dust. With a wave of his sleeve, he retracted his spiritual energy back into his deific consciousness space. Just as he was about to raise his saber to chase after Dongfang Xingchen, he saw Shimen Fafu and Dongfang Haoran. The two palace lords' expressions were indescribably complicated, their gazes filled with malice as they stared at Yun Yang. With the delay, Dongfang Xingchen had already escaped tens of thousands of feet away, but he did not even dare to turn his head back. Naturally, he had no idea what had happened here. The purple aura on Dongfang Haoran's face rose abruptly as he hollered, Bastard! Come back here! Chapter 1384. Dongfang Xingchen turned a deaf ear to it. He was already scared out of his wits, and could only think of running for his life. He could not think of anything else. Dongfang Haoran roared and stretched out his hand. He tore through the air and pulled Dongfang Xingchen, who was running for his life thousands of feet away, back. Dongfang Xingchen's mind was still muddled when he was pulled back. He did not even see who had grabbed him, and fell to the ground in a daze. He knelt down with a plop and kowtowed repeatedly. Spare me, don't kill me. I'm a despicable person. I'm a beast, I'm a bastard. He was completely scared out of his wits. Heavens, Shimen Huanyu and Beigong Wushuang were people of the same status as him, but they had been killed right in front of him. The blood, gurgling, Dongfang Haoran's facial muscles twitched. Shimen Fanfu's face was contorted as well. At this moment, his gaze towards Dongfang Haoran was tinged with sympathy. Yin Yang's expression was cold. What was done. The people were all killed. The two palace lords are here. Let's see what you do next. No matter what, I'll take it. Shimen Fanfu's lips still had traces of blood. His face was pale, and he was no longer as elegant as he had been when they first met. His gaze towards Yun Yang was constantly changing. There was a sigh, a helplessness, and occasionally, a deep hatred that flashed across his eyes. When he was tearing through the air, the jade fate pendant in his embrace had shattered continuously. His divine soul had been injured thrice. He already knew that one of his sons and two of his disciples were dead. They had all died in the most extreme way, with their souls destroyed. At this moment, Although he was looking at Yun Yang with a complicated gaze, his heart was actually a blank space. It was not just him. The corners of Dongfang Haoren's lips were dripping with blood as well. Looking at his son who was frantically kowtowing and begging for mercy, his mind was completely blank. He could only hear the rumbling of thunder as his heart and soul were almost shattered. It was as if stars were exploding in front of him. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. To Dongfang Haoren, he would rather see his son killed by Yun Yang in battle. Although he was in the wrong, he still fought to the death with Yun Yang. He would rather see his son's body crushed and his soul destroyed than to see his son betray his senior brother, and then kowtow and beg for mercy without a shred of backbone. Especially, she had already been standing here for a while, but her son, who was already scared out of his wits, had yet to wake up. He was still kowtowing and begging for mercy. I'm a despicable person. I'm a beast. I'm a turtle bastard. Then who am I? What am I? At this moment, Dongfang Haoren felt that he had lost a great deal of face. Even if he were to die now, he would be too ashamed to face his ancestors. For a moment, the three of them were silent. They stared at each other for a while. Yun Yang's gaze was open and aboveboard. He did not avoid the other's gaze, but rather, his gaze was directed at the two palace lords of the Eastern and Shimen heavenly palaces. Dongfang Xingchen finally sensed that something was amiss, and sneakily raised his head. Seeing Dongfang Haoren, he suddenly burst into tears and crawled to Dongfang Haoren's side. He hugged Dongfang Haoren's thigh and screamed with a distorted face, "Father! Father! It's Yin Yang! Kill him, kill him! He's a devil, father! Shut up!" Dongfang Haoren's body jerked as he sent Dongfang Xingchen flying away. Then he slapped him hard on the face. This slap was extremely forceful. Dongfang Xingchen's body spun 17 to 18 rounds in the air, like a spinning top, before he collapsed to the ground like a pile of mud. He did not even have the time to make a sound before he fainted. What happened? Dongfang Haoren looked at Yin Yang, his gaze bitter and indescribable. How did things come to this stage? Yin Yang shrugged and said indifferently, "What happened? Wasn't everything in front of them within the expectations of the palace masters? Why are you asking me instead? Your son is right in front of you. When your son wakes up, just ask him directly. I'm not in the mood to waste my breath now." The murderous intent in his eyes did not fade. "Don't worry, I'll only kill him after you've asked him. So many people have died, but the mastermind is still alive. How can there be such a logic in this world?" Yin Yang sucked in a deep breath and faced Dongfang Haoren's murderous glare as he spoke calmly and seriously. "Yin Yang." Shimen Fafu could not hold it in any longer and hissed, "Aren't your methods too vicious? Dozens of Saint Lords have fallen in this battle. It's like half of the three heavenly palaces' territory has been destroyed here. How could you do this?" Shimen Fafu looked around the battlefield and felt his eyes were about to split open. Saint Lords were the pinnacle of combat power in the bound of universe. Any one of them was precious, but so many of them had been lost in this battle. It had to be said that this loss was too great. Yin Yang smiled insincerely and said, "Palace Lord Shimen's focus is a little biased. Your son Shimen Huanyu also lost his life in my hands. If you want revenge, there are many reasons. Whether it's because you hate me for being vicious and destroying the bound of universe's countless pillars, or because you want to avenge your son, there are plenty of reasons that are available for you to choose. It's up to you." He looked coldly and sharply at Shimen Huanyu and said in a mocking tone, "I know that your heart is in pain, and I also know that you are very dissatisfied with me, but your feelings have nothing to do with me, especially the excuse that you just gave me. It made me look down on you." Yin Yang crossed his arms in front of his chest and said coldly, "Isn't the right and wrong already clear? Why do you have to list out your crimes? If you want to take revenge or find trouble with me, then bring it on." He laughed. "It's not the first time you've inverted right and wrong anyway. My son is like this. Your father is like this too. Yin Yang will take it all." Shimen Fafu's eyes were red with anger as he said coldly, "How dare you talk to me like this?" Yin Yang did not back down and said coldly, "May I ask Palace Lord, how should I talk to you? Should I bow and kneel to beg for mercy, Or should I compromise and beg for my life? It's a pity that I'd rather be beaten to death than be frightened to death. Shimon Fafa was furious. His state of mind was gradually becoming unstable from the repeated injuries he had suffered. Justice and hatred surged in his heart. Although he knew that this result was foreseen, he did not expect that the moment it came true, the reality would be so severe and so painful. Total annihilation. Not a single survivor. Everyone calm down. Dongfang Haoren slowly straightened up. His emotions were similarly agitated, but he managed to suppress his agitated heart with some effort using his mystical skill. But blood still flowed freely. Yin Yang glanced sideways, and was shocked to see that Dongfang Haoren's usually upright body was now hunched. Was this a sign that the heart had died? How could Dongfang Haoren not know that his state of mind was also unbalanced? He was even on the verge of qi deviation, but he had to force himself to speak up to stop the tense atmosphere between Yin Yang and Shimon Fafu. Once the two of them started fighting, it would truly be a disaster for the world. Shimon Fafa snorted coldly and closed his eyes, cultivating his mystical skill to suppress his raging qi and blood. He tried to calm himself down, but the more he tried to suppress it, the more his emotions surged. His thoughts wandered further and further. What's the result? Dongfang Haoren looked at Yin Yang. Ever since I reappeared, from the very beginning, I first killed the 3 Shui brothers of the same clan. Then, there were the 13 impostors who impersonated me, and they were all annihilated. Then came today's battle. Each of the 8 holy sons had about 10 or so Saint Monarch level guards under them. Now they are all dead. 7 of the 8 holy sons have died, and your son is the 8th. Roughly speaking, there are about 90 people, not more than 100. There are also the 3 who realized their mistake and have gone to the Crimson Soul Mountain. Yin Yang frowned. I don't remember so clearly. It's about these people. Dongfang Haoren's eyes widened like bells. Not a single one was spared. Yin Yang looked at him in surprise. Palace Lord Dongfang, have you really gone senile? They wanted to kill me all the time, but I still held back against them. Each of them was a Saint Lord. Was I tired of living, or did I hold back against them, because they weren't ruthless enough? If it were you, would you hold back? Would you dare to hold back? Besides, I've only cleaned up those from the 3 heavenly palaces. There's still the Sacred Heart Palace that I haven't touched. He sighed. I'm too cautious in my actions, overcautious and indecisive, thinking of this and that and too kind. I've never hardened my heart to settle it. If Senior Ning Fengxue hadn't come and enlightened me, I'm afraid I wouldn't have hardened my heart. Yin Yang's eyes were filled with melancholy as he murmured, Am I too indecisive? Dongfang Haoren's eyelid twitched and his lips twitched. Was she too indecisive? Too kind? You came out from the holy land of Tian Fa and killed dozens of Saint Lords. And you say you're not ruthless enough? Then you killed the 3 Shui brothers in succession, ruthless and merciless. And you say you're not decisive enough? Dozens of Saint Lords who pretended to be Supreme Cloud were killed by you one by one. Their souls destroyed without a trace. And you say you're indecisive? Today, you slaughtered more than 70 Saint Lords in one go, without hesitation and unusually decisive. And you say, you're not ruthless enough? Out of the 8 holy sons, you slaughtered 7 of them without batting an eyelid. And now you're still waiting to kill the last one. You even said this in front of his father, saying it again and again. Are you still feeling so melancholy that you're too kind and indecisive? Even if you've held back due to the circumstances, even if you've held back, Dongfang Haoren had the urge to roll his eyes. If the way you act can still be considered as indecisive, then what will you be like when you're truly decisive in your killing? Yin Yang gave the answer himself. Actually, I'm still too weak. I'm too attached to human relations. I should be like how I was in the demon race. Without the threat of millions of lives, how would anyone care about me? Everyone wants to mess with me and use me as a stepping stone to advance. Weak? Too rigidly attached to human relations. Dongfang Haoren shut his mouth and sucked in a deep breath. He realized that the raging qi and blood in him, that he could barely suppress, had actually calmed down with Yin Yang's words. So, you're the one who cured me of my qi deviation crisis? You're F*** King amazing. With a puff, Shimin Fangfu breathed out 2 streams of white mist from his nostrils, shooting out 30 feet in a straight line, as if they were real. If the 2 drops of blood from his nose followed, he would have looked very imposing. This also means that the 30 Saint Lords who accompanied the Sons of Saint from West Heaven Saint Palace have all died in your hands. Shimin Fanfu's tone was filled with indescribable joy and sorrow. I thought you'd be grateful to me. Have I misjudged? Yin Yang said coldly. Due to Shimin Fanfu's attitude just now, Yin Yang was very dissatisfied with this Lord of West Heaven Saint Palace, so his tone was rather harsh. After all, a considerable part of the current situation was made possible by the 3 palace lords. Yin Yang had put in the effort, risked his life, and not only did he not gain any benefits, he was even blamed by others. Even when he knew that Shimin Fanfu had lost his son and disciple, as well as many of his capable subordinates, and that his state of mind was greatly affected, Yin Yang still chose to respond coldly. Shimin Fanfu suddenly howled into the sky, his aura surging as the dark clouds in the sky dispersed. His voice was filled with sorrow, murderous intent, and a thick sense of helplessness. After a long time, he finally calmed down and said in a dry voice, "You're right. I really should be grateful to you." Yin Yang was stunned. Shimin Fanfu said, "The instigator of this turn of events was not you, nor was it Huan Yu and the others. It was us 3 old fellows. Everything was brought upon by us 3 old fellows. Towards you, who had worked so hard, we should only thank you. But being grateful to you is one thing. But right now, there's still a barrier in my heart that I can't get over. I'm afraid I won't be nice to you for a while. Please forgive me, Supreme Cloud." Yin Yang felt relieved when he heard this, an inexplicable respect rising in his heart. He said, "Senior is too polite." Shimin Fanfu's expression was conflicted as he sighed in melancholy. His mood was low, showing that he was still unable to calm his emotions. Dongfang Haoran's face was dark as he said, "This matter was indeed caused by us 3 old men being too optimistic. We never would have thought that they would dare to publicly attack you without any fear. How could they dare? How could they dare?" Yin Yang smiled faintly. "I shouldn't answer this question. Your son is right beside you. Won't you know once you wake him up? I'm sure he wouldn't dare lie in front of the 2 lords of the palace. Would he?" Shimin Fanfu's gaze froze as he turned to look at Dongfang Xingchen. His son was dead, his disciple was dead, but Yin Yang the murderer was unable to hate, be angry, or even complain. How could Dongfang Haoran, who was also the culprit, be spared? Dongfang Xingchen slowly woke up. When he opened his eyes, he saw that his father and Shimin Fanfu were really nearby. He heaved a sigh of relief. He was safe. His life was saved. "I've been coaxing my wife these days. This woman insisted on going out to play, but I didn't want to. Why should I go out on such a hot day? She's been arguing with me for a week now. If all else fails, it looks like I'll have to go out myself. Sigh, she's not afraid of me now that she's beaten up so lightly." Chapter 1385. However, Dongfang Xingchen saw that his father's expression was unusually sour, while Palace Lord Shimin Fengfu's gaze towards him was even more complicated, mixed with an inexplicable glint. What was going on? "Father, Uncle Shimin." Dongfang Xingchen bowed respectfully, his movements returning to normal. However, he could clearly feel his head buzzing. A few of his teeth seemed to have fallen out, and there was a thick taste of blood in his mouth. "Who knocked me out?" "It must be that bastard Yin Yang." "Yin Yang, you'd asterisk Ned brat, just you wait. Now that my father and Senior Shimin are gathered here, you'll die for sure." Dongfang Haoran's expression was dark as he said, "Tell me what you've been doing all this time, one by one." Dongfang Xingchen thought of something and replied, "Yes." Dongfang Xingchen had prepared a script in an instant. In fact, he had already prepared a reply to his father and the other 2 palace lords after he had killed Yin Yang. He could say that Yin Yang had died in the hands of his enemies due to enmity, or that Yin Yang was young and arrogant, provoking jealousy and being schemed against by those who envied him. He could also say that Yin Yang had Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingshu's beauty, and desire to kill him, as soon as he knew that Yin Yang had 2 beauties at the same time. He even had an excuse for inciting Ning Fengxue. Yin Yang's murderous aura was too strong and arrogant. So Senior Ning wanted to teach him a lesson, but Yin Yang was unruly and Senior Ning could not stop himself. Although each reason was just for show, it was definitely acceptable for a worthless dead man. At least, it was enough for Dongfang Xingchen. What Dongfang Xingchen wanted to do now was to magnify Yin Yang's arrogance, ruthlessness and insanity. At least, he wanted to make his stance against Yin Yang a talking point. However, as the two shocking auras came crashing down, Dongfang Xingchen was completely stunned. Dongfang Haoren and Shimen Fengfu looked at him with their 4 eyes and said in a chilling voice, "Do not hide anything." Dongfang Xingchen only felt his mind go blurry, as though he was lost in the boundless starry sky. In that moment his heart was in a trance, as though he could not even think straight. Everything he said came from his heart. Ever since we came to Tonight City, his expression was wooden as he narrated like flowing water. He described everything in detail without any mistakes or omissions. Nor did he say anything that was not true. How did he arrange it? How did he assassinate Yin Yang? How did the others discuss it with him? How did they set up the trap? How did they come up with excuses? How did they plan to wipe out the residents of 9 Supremes and the residents of 9th Supremes? Once it was destroyed, how would the power be divided? How would the wealth be divided? And who would own Ji Lingxi and the other beauties? What did Yu Junxiao say? What did Shimen Huanyu say? What did Beigong Wushuang say? How did the Sons of Holy Lands discuss? How did they go from fighting on their own in the beginning to all the Sons of Holy Lands deciding to work together to target Yin Yang? Until today, when Beigong Wushuang had gone to test Yin Yang for some unknown reason, he had been hunted down by Yin Yang instead. Then, Beigong Wushuang had been killed by Yin Yang in front of them, and had even pointed the finger at them. Naturally, they were unwilling to sit still and wait for their deaths, so they had retaliated after that. How did Yin Yang erupt? How did he go on a killing spree? Finally, how did he and Yu Junxiao escape? How were they hunted down by Yin Yang? And how did they do it? What Dongfang Xingchen could not understand the most was how Yin Yang had managed to escape when he had asked Ning Fengxue to personally deal with Yin Yang. How was it possible? The more Dongfang Haoren listened, the uglier his expression became, and his breathing grew heavier. In the end, he was already breathing like a bellow. Shimen Fafa heard his son, Shimen Huanyu, say, "Although Supreme Cloud is the continent's hero, as long as we deny his identity, we can naturally kill him and not leave any loose ends. We have so many witnesses on our side, we can still say whatever we want. History books have always been written by the victors, who would stand up for a dead man. At most, we will create an illusion and point the finger at the demon race. I believe the demon race will be more than happy to take the blame." After he finished speaking, his already ashen face turned even uglier. When he heard how they would split the wealth and beauties, and so on, the 2 palace lords felt their hearts wrench in pain. How did we educate such a bunch of trash? What kind of F***king trash are they? As Dongfang Xingchen went deeper, Shimen Fafa's gaze towards Dongfang Haoren was filled with sympathy, as if they were in the same boat. As for his gaze towards Dongfang Xingchen, it was no longer complicated, but filled with pity. "Silly child. Your father definitely doesn't want to kill you. But every time you speak, you take another step forward on the road to the netherworld. You are still going on, and you still haven't finished speaking, pitiful old Dongfang. You will also have to face the pain of losing your son. Luckily this daddy's men are all dead, otherwise." Thinking of this, Shimen Fafu felt an indescribable sense of relief. He was confused by his own feelings. F***ck, my son and disciples are all dead, and I am still rejoicing. This reaction is not normal. After listening to Dongfang Xingchen's story, Dongfang Haoren's originally gloomy face turned pale. His body swayed in despair as he asked in a low voice, "As a holy son, you should have your own considerations. But facing the continent's hero, other than getting rid of him, don't you have any other thoughts?" Dongfang Xingchen's face was wooden, but his voice was calm. "Hero is just a title, and the so-called achievements are just legends. When I become the palace lord of the Sky Palace in the future, no matter how many heroes I want to create, it will just be a matter of a word. Heroes have always been tools for those in power to win over the hearts of the people and to stimulate the world. Why do I need any other thoughts? It was not only Dongfang Haoran who heard this. Even Shimen Fafa's eyes widened. This was a hero who had bled and sacrificed his life for humanity, for the race, the backbone of the entire human race. This fellow had such an attitude towards the heroes of the human race. No, not only him. All the fallen holy sons probably had the same attitude. Otherwise, how could they have gathered together and worked together? Shimen Fafa suddenly interrupted. The hero you speak of, is it only Yun Yang, or all the heroes? His voice was awe-inspiring. Dongfang Xingchen answered without hesitation. Only the dead deserve to be called a hero. Yun Yang has earned the title of a hero as a living man. So why shouldn't he die? Only a worthless dead man can be praised as a hero. Besides, a hero only leaves behind a pile of wealth, waiting for others to divide it. His descendants will never be able to keep the family business anyway. It will only benefit those in power like us. Even if he is a hero, as long as he is dead, what value does he have? Who would be willing to stand up for him? This kind of thing is too safe. Shimen Fafa chuckled coldly and said, truly the scheming of an emperor. Dongfang, you taught him well. Dongfang Haoran's face darkened. Dongfang Xingchen said lightly, Shimen Huan, you and I have the same thoughts. Shimen Fafa's face darkened as well. Right now, Dongfang Xingchen was completely shaken, and his thoughts were the most honest reactions. Hearing him say this, Shimen Fafa's heart turned cold. Dongfang Haoran's expression changed again, an ominous thought rising in his mind. Closing his eyes, he asked with a hopeless heart. From what you've said, you've done something to the previous heroes of the human race? Dongfang Xingchen was still in a state of extreme shock, replying woodenly, such benefits, it would be a waste not to take them. 50 years ago, Yang Xingjun, who was sacrificed at the Blood Soul Mountain, had a beautiful girl in his bloodline family. I wanted to take her as a concubine, but the Yang family was actually not willing. They did not know how to appreciate favors, and their entire family was slaughtered. That girl, Yang Xiner, was played by me for over a year, but she still wanted to assassinate me like an ant trying to shake a tree, and was directly crushed to death by me. Also 70 years ago, the old and weak Niu family actually guarded their treasure and refused to hand it over. They were all killed by me as well. We are the leaders, the backbone of the human race. If the human race has any good things, we should naturally be the first to enjoy them. If there are any treasures, we should immediately offer them up. This is the reward that our generation has put in for so many years. Only when we live comfortably can we better serve the human race. They relied on the fact that they are the families of heroes, and a dead person's name, yet they refused to hand it over. Furthermore, they even dared to say that they deserved to die. The descendants of heroes enjoyed too much of the legacy of heroes, and did not know when to advance or retreat. Weren't they courting death? I allowed them to go to the netherworld and become the families of heroes. After all, their families had all gone down in one piece. Also 200 years ago, 300 years ago, Dongfang Xingchen's mouth flowed like a torrential river. Incident after incident, even after an hour, Dongfang Xingchen had only traced back to a few hundred years ago. Dongfang Haoran's face was ashen, and his entire body was trembling. After a long while, when Dongfang Xingchen finally finished speaking, Dongfang Haoran was already on the verge of collapse. He was gasping for breath in large mouthfuls, but his eyes seemed to have popped out of their sockets uncontrollably. Hee. Dongfang Haoran let out a meaningless sound. He felt as if his heart had stopped beating at this moment, and it was beating so violently that it felt like it was going to jump out of his throat at any moment. The entire galaxy in the universe seemed to explode and shatter in his mind in a myriad of colors. Shimen Fanfu suddenly felt some heartache for this brother of his, who had been friends with him for tens of thousands of years. Many of these things had caused even him to feel his blood run cold, and he was so angry that his guts were about to explode. As for Dongfang Haoran, all of these things were actually done by his own son. This caused Dongfang Xingchen, who had given his life for the sake of humanity and was the most proud of himself, to be able to live his life in such a manner? After Dongfang Xingchen finished speaking, his mind was still muddled. Dongfang Haoren's face contorted for a long time, and suddenly, tears flowed down like a spring, flowing down his face as he choked with sobs. So it was like this is the truth. I have let down all of my fallen brothers. Dongfang Haoren choked with sobs, his face filled with sorrow. My fallen brothers, for the sake of humanity, you sacrificed your freedom, sacrificed your life, sacrificed your everything. But your children's bloodline was trampled on by my son. I have let down all of you. I have let down all of you. Dongfang Haoren was in extreme pain, and he felt so guilty that his internal organs were about to shatter. This was something that he had never imagined. He could have stopped asking after asking about this matter, but Dongfang Haoren had to ask. He wanted to find an excuse for his son. He had never done anything bad before, but this time, he had been blinded by greed, and his mind had been clouded by a moment of confusion. Even the sentence that he had said was to help Dongfang Haoren's thoughts. Who would have thought that the moment he asked this question, it would be a heart-wrenching pain that made him wish he was dead? Dongfang Haoren felt as if his internal organs were on fire. It was not that his internal injuries were deep, but rather that his mental state was becoming more and more unstable. Thinking back to the past, it was not like he had not heard of the families of his old brothers disappearing, no longer in their homeland. He had even received a letter from his son saying that they had all returned to their homeland, no longer caring about worldly affairs. So many times, he had always sighed. He could not understand why the families of his brothers would move away every once in a while. They were clearly staying close to him, whether it was resources, or if it was convenient for him to take care of them. It was extremely beneficial to the growth of his descendants. So why did they have to move away? He did not understand. Only now did he understand that it was not that they wanted to move away. It was that his son had taken care of them in his place, taking care of their entire family to the point of death. If they really moved away, then that would be the true fortune. At least they would not have to die, and their entire family would be wiped out. That is the bloodline of heroes, the families of my brothers. Dongfang Haoren howled miserably. I am the one who deserves to die. I deserve to die. I deserve to die. I deserve to die. His cries of I deserve to die resounded throughout the world. In his voice, there was a heart-wrenching pain, as well as a lingering sense of despair and guilt. It was indescribable. It was indescribable. There were many things, no, it should be the vast majority of things. If he paid a little attention, he would be able to discover the truth. But he did not know anything. Just when did he start to trust his own son so much? It is the fault of the father who did not teach him well. And I, Dongfang Xingchen, have committed an unforgivable crime. He howled in rage and lowered his head, looking at his son with an ashen gaze. There are so many blood debts, and with only your life, how can it be made up for? Dongfang Haoren looked at his son sorrowfully, his eyes filled with blood. His entire body was trembling. At this time, Dongfang Xingchen finally came to his senses, completely awake. He used his eyes that had regained clarity to look at his father's extremely unsightly expression. He actually pretended to be calm and said, "Father, what has happened to make Father so worried? Father, please tell me so that I can share your worries." Yes, this was the tone, making him believe that his son would not disappoint him, that this father was a hero and his son was a good man. But the reality was, this father was a stupid bear and his son was a bastard. Dongfang Haoren sucked in a deep breath and closed his eyes. Not only was his body trembling, even his fists were trembling. He spoke in a hoarse voice. "Yin Yang, are you going to do it or should I?" Chapter 1386. Once Dongfang Xingchen heard Yin Yang's name, he was stunned. Yin Yang. Turning his head, Yin Yang's masked silhouette came into view, standing not far away from him. The pair of eyes behind the mask was glinting with a cold, murderous intent as they locked onto him. Yin Yang's heart was stronger than steel, but he could not help but sigh at this moment. Dongfang Haoren's words were clear. Who would do it? No matter who did it, Dongfang Xingchen had to die. He was doomed. In spite of this, Yun Yang was uncharacteristically hesitant, so he said, "I've never thought of asking you to do it. After all, even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its own cubs. Killing your own son is not only a form of heartache to you, it's also an internal demon. Therefore, I've planned to be the one to deal the killing blow from the start. However, things are different now. You've asked so many questions, so many descendants of heroes have died unjustly. If you don't end this yourself, not only will the guilt in your heart be difficult to vent, it will become an internal demon, and it will be difficult to give an explanation to the countless wronged souls." Yun Yang paused for a moment before speaking again. "It's a dilemma. I wonder if Palace Lord Shiman has any suggestions on how to deal with this?" Shiman Fafa's eyes were filled with admiration. Although his son had died a step earlier in Yun Yang's hands, he was still impressed by Yun Yang's ingenuity at the moment. The 2 points that Yun Yang had mentioned were both important points. Whether he let Dongfang Haoren do it or not, it was a huge problem. As for this suggestion, it was best for him, the indirect party involved, to resolve the issue. Just as he was about to speak, he broke out in a cold sweat. Shiman Fafa suddenly had a thought. Dongfang Xingchen's actions were insane, heinous, and deserved to die. It was obvious that Dongfang Haoren did not know about the shady business he had done. Otherwise, the situation would not have spiraled out of control. Then what about himself? What about his own son Shiman Fafu? Dongfang Xingchen did not die, and Dongfang Haoren had asked about these things. This had led to the boundless guilt in his heart. He was in a dilemma, with no way out. What if Shiman Fafa did not die? Should he ask? He might have to ask as well. Would the answer be optimistic? Shiman Fafa didn't have any illusions at all, because he had already remembered that in his own Western Heaven Divine Palace, there seemed to be some descendants of heroes who chose to move their entire family away, fleeing far away. From then on, there was no news of them, as if they had vanished into thin air. Just a moment ago, Dongfang Xingchen had even said that Shimen Huanyu shared the same opinion as me. Doesn't that mean Shimen Fengfu broke out in a cold sweat, drenching his robe? But he spoke resolutely. "Yun Yang, it's better for you to do it." Dongfang Haoren could make up for the guilt in his heart by killing enemies in the future. But if he really did something like personally killing his own son, the damage to his heart would be something that he would never be able to make up for in his entire life. Dongfang Xingchen's eyes widened as he looked from one to another, before looking back at his father. His mind was once again in a state of chaos. What's going on? Are they discussing who's going to kill me? Why? Suddenly, a huge sense of absurdity surged in his heart. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? How could this happen? My own father is discussing who's going to kill me with someone else? Father. Dongfang Xingchen looked at his father pleadingly, his eyes filled with hope. Dongfang Haoren gritted his teeth and glared at him. Shut up. I, Dongfang Haoren, do not have a bastard son like you. Clang. Yun Yang pulled out his saber from its scabbard, his murderous intent rising to the next level. Father. Save me. Dongfang Xingchen had already realized something, and was unwilling to die, so he screamed at the top of his lungs. However, his last cry for help was only halfway through when Yun Yang's saber light slashed down like a waterfall. He could not wait to see this shameless face ever again. The saber light fell. Blood splattered. Green light rose. His soul was obliterated. Dongfang Xingchen's body was split into two, falling to the ground with a thud. His head fell to the ground with a thud, rolling a few times before he faced the sky, his eyes still filled with confusion. Why? Dongfang Haoren faced the sky, his body trembling even more violently. His lips and eyes were tightly shut. He still did not want to see his son's final death. But in the end he still turned his head and took a look. That tall figure did not change at all, but the feeling it gave was as if he had aged several decades in that instant. It was over. From a small meatball that he had hugged and teased in his arms, to growing up bit by bit, to being taught bit by bit, to experiencing so many years to this day at this moment, it had all turned into nothingness. He had died, but the heinous sins he had committed, how could he redeem them? He closed his eyes, and could vaguely see countless figures appearing in front of him. They were his brothers, and all of them were angrily questioning him. Dongfang Haoran, I have fought for humanity my entire life and died. You promised to take care of my descendants. Is this how you take care of them? Dongfang, where is your promise? Dongfang, how is my family? Dongfang, you've taken care of them too well. Should I thank you? Dongfang, is this how you treat your dead brother's family? Dongfang Haoran closed his eyes and suddenly roared. No. Brothers, The figure in front of him suddenly disappeared. Shimin Fanfu watched from the side and sighed softly. Dongfang. Huh. Dongfang Haoran was confused. Let's go back. Go back. Back to the palace. Call the northern palace back to the palace. The matter in this room has already been settled. Back to the palace, Dongfang Haoran's voice was distant. After a long time, he said as if he was sleep-talking. That's right, we have to go back and clean up the mess. To give an explanation to the brothers who sacrificed themselves back then. I want to go to their graves, to kowtow and ask for forgiveness. My son is unfilial. It's all his old man's fault. Even though this apology is meaningless. Yin Yang was silent on the side. At this moment, no matter how intelligent he was, he didn't know what he should say to deal with this situation. It was as if anything he said was meaningless. He firmly believed that he had not done anything wrong, that his killing was justified and gratifying. However, in the face of these two fathers who had just lost their own sons, he could not be completely confident. After all, their sons were killed by him. Kinship was once Yin Yang's biggest regret and desire. Even now, with a goal in mind, Yin Yang still cherished every bit of kinship. He dared not even imagine what his choice would be if this happened to him. The two palace lords staggered as they turned to leave, their silhouettes extremely bleak. Palace Lord Dongfang. Yin Yang called out after a moment of hesitation. Dongfang Haoran stopped but did not turn back. What is it? Aren't you going to take your son's body? Yin Yang asked. Once Dongfang Xingqian's soul was destroyed, there would be no trace of him remaining. However, his corpse would still exist. And if he were to bury him, even though it would be akin to burying his head, it would still be a form of consolation to a father. Dongfang Haoran trembled and froze on the spot. After a long time, he gritted his teeth and said hoarsely, Then feed him to the dogs. Suddenly, with a long howl, he soared into the sky and turned into a ray of light, vanishing in a flash. Shimin Fafa sighed and rolled up his sleeves, wrapping up the two halves of Dongfang Xingqian's corpse, and keeping them into his spatial ring. His voice was hollow as he said, This reputed one wants to go back as well, go back and investigate whether these people have committed the same sin all these years. His voice was trembling, obviously not the least bit confident in the results of his investigation. In fact, Shimin Fafa knew it very well like a mirror. His son and Dongfang Xingqian had similar statuses. Whether it was their foresight, experience, or knowledge, they were on par with each other. Even their strategy towards Yin Yang, the hero of the Bound of Universe, was the same. With such similar temperaments, and almost the same obsession for power, how could they be different when it came to treating heroes differently? He believed that Shimin Huanyu had probably done most of what Dongfang Xingqian had done, even if he did not do all of them. Shimin Fafa knew his son very well, especially when he had heard Dongfang Xingqian's confession from a close distance. It would be better if he did not investigate this, as he could still be muddle-headed. However, he could not be muddle-headed like this. It was rare for him to be muddle-headed. What about the heroic souls who had died in battle? What about the wrong souls who had died unjustly? He had to investigate this matter. Palace Lord Shimin. Yin Yang said solemnly, The dead have passed. Please restrain your grief. However, I still have something to say. Having gotten rid of so many people today, for the future development of the three heavenly palaces, it may be a temporary loss of vitality and a sharp decline in combat power, but there will be many benefits in the future. The benefits will ultimately outweigh the disadvantages. The advantages outweigh the disadvantages? With Shimin Fafa's experience, he would not have missed this point and agreed with it. However, what you're talking about is the future after all. The reality now is, my son is dead. I'm sad my subordinates are dead. I'm sad too my situation is even worse than that old man Dongfang Haoran's. I'm now in a dilemma of life and death. How can I face my wife when I return? My son has been killed right in front of me. I know who the murderer is, but I can't avenge him. My wife is furious and wants to seek revenge, but I can't let her come. To a man who has the final say in his own family, this may not be a big deal, but to me, it's like the sky has fallen. Sigh. Shaking his head sadly, Shiman Fafa sighed softly, gone gone. With a swoosh, he turned into a rainbow and left. The three palace lords did not even go to the battlefield where the Saint Lords had fallen to take a look, leaving just like that. Yin Yang stood where he was for a long time. After half a day, he returned and picked up the scattered spatial equipment along the way. At this moment, the huge Tonight City was similar to a dead city. There was not the slightest bit of movement in any direction. From the place where Dongfang Xingqian had fallen to the main battlefield, the personal belongings of the Saint Lords and Sons of Saints were scattered everywhere. Even though they were broken pieces of weapons, they shone brilliantly. Not a single one of them was ordinary. However, no one dared to pick them up. Yun Yang tidied up along the way back, not leaving a single thing unattended. He did not live up to his reputation of plucking feathers as he passed. After collecting all the spatial equipment and broken pieces of weapons, Yun Yang waved his hand and gathered all the remains of the dead experts together. With a punch, he punched a hole in the ground and threw all the broken pieces of flesh and blood into it. Then, with a sweep of his hands, the ground was leveled once again. However, there was not even a tombstone marking the place where the Saint Lords had died. They were destined to vanish from this world, never to be heard of again. After today, perhaps Tonight's City will become the new cultivation sanctuary of the bound of universe. Even if the ordinary people who live here don't embark on the path of cultivation, just a little nourishment from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth will improve their physique, reducing the possibility of injuries and illnesses. Yin Yang mumbled to himself. Among the cultivators who had fallen in this battle, the lowest cultivation base was at the pinnacle of the 4th level of Saint Venerable, while most of them had the cultivation base of Saint Lords. Their flesh, blood, and bones were filled with the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Buried underground, they would slowly evaporate and produce a large amount of spiritual energy to nourish heaven and earth. This process could go on for hundreds or even thousands of years. That was why Yin Yang had such a thought. After you die, make a little contribution to the ordinary people of Tonight's City, and you can slightly redeem some of your sins. He turned around and looked in another direction. Then he began to walk over. The other end of that direction was where the people of the Sacred Heart Palace lived. Let's hope they haven't escaped yet. Yin Yang walked over step by step. What he had said to Dongfang Haoran earlier was from the bottom of his heart. Of course, he had to say what he had said. There's no need to go over. A clear voice rang out. The people of the Sacred Heart Palace have all left. Yin Yang turned to look at the source of the voice. White clothes fluttered in the wind, and a white veil covered her face. She was slim and graceful like a fairy. It was Shangguan Lingxiu. Why haven't you left? Humph, Shangguan Lingxiu said. If I had left, how could I have seen Lord Supreme Cloud's amazing prowess? Yin Yang felt the murderous aura around him recede like the tide, replaced by serenity and warmth. He smiled and said, I knew there must be something fishy about the two of you agreeing so readily. There was a smile in Shangguan Lingxiu's eyes that was as gentle as spring water. She said, I heard that it's quite a distance from here to the residence of 9 Supremes. Yin Yang understood instantly. He bowed politely in a noble's manner and said, I wonder if this young one has the honor of inviting Lady Shangguan to walk side by side on the journey home? Shangguan Lingxiu thought about it and said reservedly, Since you're quite polite, I shall grant you this opportunity. Chapter 1387. They looked at each other and smiled, instantly knowing each other. What do you plan to do about the Sacred Heart Palace? They've escaped this calamity. We'll take it one step at a time. Well. Their voices grew softer and softer as they went further and further away. They gradually passed through the city and disappeared into the yellow sand path far away. From this day onwards, a new name had been added to Tonight City, the Land of Saint Massacre. In less than half a month's time, there were actually over 100 saint monarchs who were currently at the pinnacle of combat strength that had perished here. What was even more terrifying was that these 100 saint lords had all been killed by one person. Naturally, a new legend was born. Supreme Cloud had returned from his battle against the demons and executed the human rebels here. He had killed hundreds of saint lords in one battle and shocked the world. It was not until 3 days after Yin Yang left that people finally dared to move on the streets of Tonight City. However, this was a story for another time. After the 3 palace masters of the 3 great sky palaces returned, they did not say a word and immediately launched a massive purge. Countless people were purged. At the same time, the entire palace was mobilized to investigate the descendants and families of the heroes who had sacrificed themselves. Those who had disappeared for no reason were searched for the bloodline of the heroes. In front of the Temple of Brave Souls, the 3 palace lords knelt down. After the 3 palace lords dealt with some matters, Dongfang Haoran and Beigong Liuli announced their closed-door cultivation at the same time. They were called the Sons of Saints and temporarily took charge of the situation. The people of the heavenly palaces were not allowed to go out, except those who were stationed at Blood Soul Mountain and those who had returned from there. An unusual battle broke out in West Heaven Saint Palace. It was said that the Lord of West Heaven Saint Palace and his wife fought, and only half of the palace was destroyed. His wife wanted to avenge her son, but the palace lord stopped her no matter what. In the end, the Lord of West Heaven Saint Palace, Shiman Fafu, was indeed a pinnacle saint, the strongest person in the world. He suppressed his wife, and even strengthened her husband's authority. However, there were also rumors that his wife cried out in grief after the battle, and announced that she would not fall out with Shiman Fafu anymore, and that she would divorce her husband. Shiman Fafu collected his son's crimes, and threw them in front of his wife. He scolded her until the world turned upside down, and the sun and moon dimmed. It was a rare moment of heroism. His wife did not seem to make a fuss anymore. Of course, very few people mentioned the final outcome of this matter. Most likely, no one knew the more detailed details. Yin Yang and Shengguan Lingxiu returned in the direction of the residence of 9 Supremes. On this day, as they passed through Lianyan Mountains, they passed a valley and Yin Yang suddenly frowned. What a thick smell of blood! Yin Yang and Luo Binghe were surprised to notice something amiss. Following the scent of blood, they arrived at a secluded valley in a moment. As far as the eye could see, the surroundings of the valley were covered in pure white snow, and only the center of the valley, that was around a few kilometers in circumference, was a complete mess. Yin Yang Yin God and Yin 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 One. Yin Yang and Shengguan Lingxiu observed carefully, and realized that the valley was littered with traces of blood, broken weapons, and dismembered corpses. It was a testament to the devastation of the battle. The two of them were surprised and paid more attention to the battle in the valley. Shengguan Lingxiu looked puzzled. It's obvious that a great battle had taken place here not too long ago, and both parties involved were quite capable. There were at least cultivators above the level of Supreme Saint. Otherwise, the battle wouldn't have ended up like this. Feeling the deathly stillness in the valley, Yin Yang could not help closing his eyes to discern it carefully. The murderer has been gone for at least 6 hours. If my guess is correct, the person who was attacked here should be someone from the Sacred Heart Palace. Yin Yang's face was filled with indescribable discomfort. Previously, his main target was the 3 holy sons of the heavenly palaces. Although he had also pressured the Sacred Heart Palace, it was not too much. After all, there were not many people in the Sacred Heart Palace, and Lei Qianli was the only clown. Yin Yang even saw the Sacred Heart Palace as an ally. After all, the Sacred Heart Palace did not have a direct conflict with him, like the sons of 3 heavenly palaces. He believed that most of the people who followed Lei Qianli here this time were hot-blooded warriors of the human race. That day at the Golden Knight Tower, those people's dissatisfaction towards Great Elder Lei Qianli had all entered Yin Yang's eyes. It was because of this that Yin Yang, did not openly offend Lei Qianli on the spot. He did not want to put others in a difficult position. Lei Qianli, who had long been targeted by Yun Yang as a traitor, must have someone else behind his back. His threat might even be higher than the group of holy sons. Acting recklessly would only cause unnecessary conflict. After all, these people were still Lei Qianli's subordinates in name. There would be a chance to settle the score with Lei Qianli, the clown, in the future. However, he did not expect this tragedy to happen in the end. He had actually underestimated Lei Qianli by labeling him as a clown. Yun Yang glided forward and looked around at the corpses that were strewn all over the ground to see if there were any survivors. He saw that the bodies of each of the deceased were dried up, as if their flesh and blood had been sucked away by something. There was no chance of survival at all. However, the faces of each of the dried corpses were filled with anger and grief. It was as if they were still questioning and roaring before they died. Yun Yang could only feel waves of heartache. It was not about the level of their abilities. These people might not be able to reach the level of the saints who had made things difficult for him in the Golden Knight Tower in their entire lives. But each of these people was a man of indomitable spirit. At the very least, they would not harm a hero. "I'm sorry I'm late." Yun Yang let out a long sigh and stood up. Let these brothers rest in peace. He carefully tidied up the remains of each person and packed up their belongings. He was prepared to hand them over to their families when he returned to the Sacred Heart Palace. When he reached the corpse in the middle, Yun Yang unexpectedly found a line of scribbled words that were almost illegible. "Lei Qianli is a demon race spy." Yun Yang let out a long sigh again, deeply regretting his late arrival. Why had he not come earlier? What he didn't know was that this incident had nothing to do with him. Whether Yun Yang came late or early, it would not affect this matter at all. In fact, on the night of the banquet, when Lei Qianli had returned, the people of the Sacred Heart Palace had almost started fighting amongst themselves. More than 50 people had asked Lei Qianli directly, "What do you mean?" Lei Qianli had used many flowery words to defend himself. In the end, he had used the excuse that he was worried that they would really welcome a fake Supreme Cloud and become the laughingstock of the Sacred Heart Palace. However, in the next few days, the people of the Sacred Heart Palace had become more and more displeased with Lei Qianli. This strong dissatisfaction had completely erupted when Yun Yang was fighting the 8 saints. But Lei Qianli still continued to argue and refused to admit that Yun Yang was Supreme Cloud. "Are all of you blind? So many saints are fighting that masked man to their death. Doesn't that mean that the masked man is not a good person? Are all the saints stupid to gang up on the hero of the bound of universe? The only explanation is that the masked man is not a good person. At least, he can't be Lord Supreme Cloud." It had to be said that Lei Qianli's words made sense. At least a small group of people had been bewitched by his words, causing the people of the Sacred Heart Palace to be divided into 2 groups. Later, under Lei Qianli's incitement, they finally came to a decision. They would not help either side and leave immediately. They would go back and not get involved in this mess. Therefore, the people from the Sacred Heart Palace had actually withdrawn when Yun Yang was fighting with the Son of God. Along the way, however, there was still a stormy quarrel. Lei Qianli repeatedly slandered the masked man and refused to admit that the man was Yun Yang. He even used his own identity to make a fuss, using the tiger's skin as a banner, which made everyone more and more unconvinced. Finally, when the soul demon returned, the conflict broke out completely. Han Yao suffered a strong shock. After returning, he was silent for a day, still in a state of shock. Then, he could not bear it anymore and killed a saint emperor in the middle of the night, absorbing the soul to calm himself down. And this incident became the breaking point of the bloody case. "There is a traitor among us, a traitor with ulterior motives." With this sentence as the beginning, it completely ignited an unprecedented conflict. On the spot, someone threatened, "When we go back, we must report to the Temple Lord to take down Lei Qianli and investigate." Then the crowd was simply divided into 2 groups. Most of them chose the other way back, and no longer traveled with Lei Qianli. It was also that night that Lei Qianli and the others came. A tragedy was brewing. I have probably guessed the whole story of your murder case, and know what you want to do. Don't worry, I will help you do it. Yun Yang said quietly in front of the newly erected grave. Lei Qianli Hunyao. Yun Yang had doubts about Lei Qianli since a long time ago. Back when he was at the Lei family, he had met the demon soul, a demon of calamity that only existed in legends by chance. He had also learned some old stories from Dong Qitian, so he had long locked onto Lei Qianli as a target. In the battle a few days ago, Hunyao hid in the dark, waiting for the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Although Emmy's momentary mistake caused the layout to be flawed, it still made Yun Yang further confirm that there was something wrong with Lei Qianli. After today's incident, Lei Qianli was no longer a suspect, but a confirmed crime. His crime was unforgivable. Lei Qianli must be killed. Yun Yang said fiercely. Shangguan Lingxiu frowned as she listened to Yun Yang's brief account of the incident. I'm afraid we can't act rashly. I think that killing Lei Qianli in a hurry will alert the enemy instead. Now it proves that there must be a demon expert hiding behind Lei Qianli. Yun Yang agreed with Shangguan Lingxiu's point of view as well. If we can't uncover the person hiding behind this, I'm afraid that eliminating Lei Qianli alone won't affect the grand scheme of things. The Sacred Heart Palace will still be faced with many dangers. It's not impossible for it to disintegrate and disappear overnight. Shangguan Lingxiu pondered and said, Then what do you plan to do next? We can't delay the Sacred Heart Palace. Let's not go back to the residence of 9 Supremes. Let's go directly to the Sacred Heart Palace. Yun Yang said seriously. Even if Zhang Wufei is prepared and even knows that there is a spy in the Sacred Heart Palace, he may not be able to lock the target on Lei Qianli. If Lei Qianli is desperate, Zhang Wufei will be in danger. Even if we kill Lei Qianli afterward, it will still be useless. Shangguan Lingxiu nodded. That's right. Let's go then. Yun Yang did not waste any time. He identified the direction and activated his mystical skill, tearing the space apart and leaving with Shangguan Lingxiu. The Sacred Heart Palace. At the foot of the mountain, Lei Qianli and his less than 20 subordinates finally arrived at the foot of the mountain. Looking at the misty clouds halfway up the mountain, a sense of guilt grew. He had brought 120 men with him to welcome the hero when he left. Now, the hero had not been received, and only 20 men had returned. Those who had fallen were all killed by him. Lei Qianli had absolute confidence that Zhang Wufei would not know about this. But it did not mean that he did not feel guilty. It's fine. The man in green beside him said casually. You only need to go in and say what we've discussed. The current situation is that Supreme Cloud's identity is a mystery. Without removing his mask, it's a fact that we can't tell. You don't need to prove your innocence. Just make sure that it's confusing and difficult to come to a conclusion. Lei Qianli gritted his teeth and said, What about the soul demon? It's better to let the soul demon attach to me. If something goes wrong, we'll join forces and kill our way out. Letting the soul demon follow him was obviously a way of retreat he had prepared for himself. Don't you know that it's unrealistic to let the soul demon go up? The man in green said faintly. The aura on the soul demon is too gloomy and gloomy. How can there be no spiritual sense experts in the Sacred Heart Palace? It's inevitable that we'll be discovered. That'll be the real waste of all our previous efforts. Even if there's a chance that Zhang Wufei will turn against us, you just have to rush out immediately, and you'll naturally have a way out. Even if you're not Zhang Wufei's opponent, if Zhang Wufei says he wants to kill you, it won't be a short time. As long as you don't fight him head-on and focus on breaking out, you'll still be able to come out even if you're inevitably injured. If Zhang Wufei pursues you here, the soul demon, and I will not only be your backup, but also the trump card to kill Zhang Wufei. Lei Qianli thought for a long time. All right, let's do it. The Sacred Heart Palace. In the main hall, Zhang Wufei's burly body sat on the throne. His eyes were clear as he stared at the sorrowful great elder Lei Qianli. It's hard to say. The purpose of our trip this time is to welcome the return of a hero. But there were too many heroes and supreme clouds in the city tonight. There were many saint lords who covered their faces that day. calling themselves supreme clouds every time they opened their mouths. In the beginning, Holy Sun Dongfang and the others had already received one. Later, everyone present was confused and couldn't figure out which one was the real supreme cloud. Every supreme cloud present had a supporter, but none of them were willing to remove their masks. In the end, a great battle broke out. What a fiery fight. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.